Paying about
The best place to hide the truth is in the pages of a book.
Maybe we should just read. Maybe we should just read.
Welcome to Hayes Reviews. Hello and good evening. This is Nick, creator of Hayes Reviews, and we're back for another live stream during which we're going to be reading from the book The Milner-Fabian Conspiracy by Ioan Ratiu. It's a 2012 book. It's been epic. If you are just tuning into this series for the first time, this is part 15. And by all means, hang out and get the value from this reading, but it is going to make a lot more sense to you if at some point after tonight's show you go back and catch up on the previous videos in this series. If you want to do that, they are on the playlists tab on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey, which are the three platforms that we are streaming to tonight. So I want to say hello to all of you tuning in live. It's very lovely indeed to have you here, and everybody watching on the replay, please remember that there'll be a pinned comment below the video with timestamps in it to the relevant various sections of tonight's video, so you can jump ahead and avail yourself of that functionality to accelerate your learning and go where your curiosity is leading you. But tonight is going to be a really great reading, I think. We're going to be starting chapter 9, and it is about multiculturalism. Yes, everybody's favorite topic, close to everybody's hearts. Nobody can say anything bad about multiculturalism. It has been a resounding success, and if you think otherwise, you might get a knock on the door from the thought police. So I have a bit of a preamble ramble lined up tonight. It's got videos, it's got articles, and then we've got about just under 40 pages to read. So it could be a long one, just letting you all know. So get comfy, get yourself a nice drink, cold, warm, fizzy, flat, whatever you prefer. Maybe even a snack, some popcorn. I wouldn't recommend popcorn. It's not that good for you. Maybe some beef jerky, as long as it's not covered in sugar. That would be a good snack. Some boiled eggs. They're pretty good. You might want to go for some cheese. Nice bit of cheese. Not the Dairy Triangle fake cheese kind of stuff, although they are pretty tasty. I used to like them a lot, especially when I was younger. But, you know, a proper piece of cheese from a cheesemonger would be a good snack to accompany tonight's video. So, hello, all of you tuning in. We got Turbs, Murray1, and Heidi over on Rumble. And then we've got Celine Lyon and Mindhack over on YouTube. Very good to see you. And the reason Frank's late is because he's in the Telegram group recording a voice message right now. And I did tell him that the live stream was starting and to get over here, but I think he's in his flow. And so I'm sure he'll be joining a little bit later on. Just in case anybody's wondering, he's usually there first one on the YouTube chat with the comment, but not tonight. So apologies for not getting a live stream out for Friday. I was under the weather, busy, flat out, and I just napped the whole evening. I wouldn't have been much use to anybody if I had have hit the live stream button that night. So apologies if you were banking on me to entertain you with a reading Friday. I hope you found something wonderful and uplifting and productive and useful and creative to do instead. But we're back, and I think we've got tonight's reading, and then we've got Fridays, and I think then we'll be done with the book. So we're on the home stretch. 2 more chapters to go. As I said, tonight's chapter is chapter 9. We'll get it finished tonight. It's a very short chapter, and then we'll be into chapter 10, which is all about Islamization, and that chapter is a bit longer and is going to take up the bulk of tonight's reading, plus probably the entirety of Friday night's reading. So I hope you're all doing well out there. I see that we've just got Elizabeth Kendall as well. Hello to you. Lovely to see you over on YouTube. And looks like all the right buttons have been pressed and all the correct functions have been engaged and we are broadcasting. So I'm going to get over to tonight's Preamble Ramble. Here we are. So here's a video that I got from a Telegram group which is called Traditional Britain, and it keeps a log of these kind of topics such as multiculturalism, immigration, and the happenings and the goings on, focusing here in the UK, which is where I live, on topics as well, such as free speech, such as the unrest, economic situations, and the different demographic changes. And this is a clip that was posted on there that I thought I would play to kick off tonight's discussion about multiculturalism. So it's 3 minutes long. I've sped it up to 1.5 speed so we can get through it a bit faster. And I'm just going to play it now. And yeah, hopefully this sets the scene. I think it will. Let me just click this thing here, and then I'll mute myself and I'll hit play.
White families in Birmingham are set to become a minority group for the first time when this year's census is collected in March.
Population forecasts seen by the BBC's Politics show suggest that more than half of children under 16 in the city are from black and Asian communities. Birmingham could become a minority white city within the next 10 to 15 years.
Children at Chadvale Primary in Edgbaston speak 20 different languages. Just a fifth of pupils here are white. The Pakistani community in Birmingham is expected to double over the next 20 years.
Just a fifth of the students in that school are white, and the Pakistani community is set to double in the next decade or so. And just as a side note, and a kind of something that happened to me that was very synchronistic, was last night I was talking to a man who hailed from a South Asian country. I don't know which one specifically, but he was telling me that he has 14 nephews. 14 nephews. That's a lot of nephews. And so he was a salesman, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go with his product. We will see. We've yet to decide which company we're going to go for. But yeah, just an anecdote that happened and kind of reinforces the report that's being made in this video. So this is a snapshot of multiculturalism in the UK. But anyway, let me carry on with the video.
A report from the UK shows white British people will soon be outnumbered by Muslim migrants in the city of Birmingham. One America's Kirsten Sharp explains how the reversal in population has also brought with it a wave of violent crime.
This is Birmingham in the 1960s, a quaint little city in central England full of farmland, churches, and a bustling city centre that enjoyed a very low crime rate and picturesque historic streets.
Those pictures that they're showing, I'm not sure that's Birmingham. I don't know if Birmingham ever looked like that, but it does look like it is England. But I'm not convinced that these are actually pictures of Birmingham. But I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Flash forward a few decades. These images aren't from Iran, Iraq, or Afghanistan. No, this is modern-day Birmingham. A new report shows native Britons are on their way to becoming a minority in their own homeland.
Apparently, my mic volume is much lower. Thank you for letting me know about that, Celine Lion. I'll adjust the volume of the video a little bit and see if I can boost my mic volume by sliding this slider up a little bit. Hopefully that's helping. And let me know if that fixed it or if I need to make any more changes. Thanks for letting me know.
The latest demographics from Birmingham reveals that nearly half of those in the UK's most multicultural city are migrants or foreign-born.
So this is the UK's most multicultural city, and nearly half are migrants or foreign-born, which is, you know, that's so multiculturalism is successful. That's what we can say for sure. Oh, we got Gwen as well in the chat, and Celine Lion says the audio is much better now. Good. And Gwen's saying that the pictures we just saw are from Bourneville, perhaps, which is very laid back and even now old worldy. Sounds good. Sounds like my kind of place, especially if they got a library in there. Okay, carrying on with the video.
Experts say that white Brits will soon be outnumbered as the city continues to swell with residents from Africa and the Middle East.
White residents will soon be outnumbered.
Yesterday, in the census figures from the 2021 census, in which it now says that white British people are a minority in 3 of the UK's largest cities, and Christianity is now a minority religion.
Britain, it alleges, has become the Western capital for Sharia courts. Yes, that's right, and the number of courts that have opened is now up to about 85.
The Western capital for Sharia courts, 85 Sharia courts. I don't know when these videos are from. There's no timestamps, but that's a parallel justice system. That's a parallel court system that doesn't work on the same principles with historic precedents that our mainstream court systems work on, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't know. I don't have much faith in the court system and the justice system as it exists, as we'll see a little later in this broadcast when I look at the stories that I've got lined up. But this idea of a parallel justice and court system is very interesting. Why is that needed? Why is it necessary? I don't know.
Former mill town of Oldham attracted mass migration from South Asia in the 50s and 60s. But a generation on, barriers are still to be broken down, which even residents admit means parts of the town are virtually segregated.
English society, more than other parts of the UK, is growing increasingly hostile to immigration. In parts of many major cities, white faces are a rarity, except if they're Polish. In an England where multiculturalism lies in pieces, Luton exemplifies just how much has gone wrong.
There's a discussion there about Luton, saying this exemplifies just how much multiculturalism is going wrong, and the populations are segregated, so they're not mixing, they're not hanging out with each other and all sharing in their mutual Britishness, united under the Union Jack, and discussing the values and the culture that makes Britain Britain. That's apparently not happening. Instead, what we've got are pockets of different cultures living separately, living different lives, living different rhythms of what they do and how they go about their day-to-day activities.
This small town, just 20 minutes north of London, has become synonymous to the British media with everything that's wrong with Islam. The other week, an entire family of 12 left this street and headed off to join the caliphate in Syria. This week, 2 men from this boring-looking road were up in...
I just got to say, I think it's a bit harsh to call this a boring-looking road. I don't know why he had to say that and get that in there. Actually, it looks pretty quiet, clean. It looks quite a safe place. I I don't know what an exciting looking road would look like. Maybe with some graffiti or a bin on fire, perhaps, or or a discarded shopping trolley. I'm not sure, but I thought that was a bit of an unnecessary dig at this road, and to whoever lives there. Just thought I'd comment on that.
Been caught, accused by the police of a plan to blow up a military base. And on the main street, sitting with a coffee, is a convert currently on bail after allegedly distributing leaflets in central London supporting ISIL.
All right, so that's to set the scene. Multiculturalism in the UK gives you a few story pieces there from a variety of news outlets. American, we got Al Jazeera. The first clip looked like a BBC broadcast, telling you a little bit about how it's going, what it looks like. Of course, this is all mainstream stuff, so it's going to have its own bias. It's going to be created for a purpose, and you know, that's kind of what we're exploring. What could that purpose be? So let's continue. Why could this be happening? Why is this the way it is? Well, maybe the king formerly known as Prince Charles could let us in with a little insight as to why things are the way they are.
The rights of Muslim women to property and inheritance and to the conducting of business were rights prescribed by the Quran 1400 years ago. Some of these rights were novel even to my grandmother's generation. Think what could be achieved if mothers and fathers, the teachers and madrasas and imams all sought to demonstrate to children how to translate Islamic teachings into practical action. Many of the traits on which modern Europe prides itself came to it from Muslim Spain.
I didn't know this, but apparently Muslim Spain is responsible for a lot of the traits that make Europe great. Okay, he's going to give us a list of them now.
Diplomacy, free trade, open borders.
So apparently we've got Muslim Spain to thank for the open borders.
The techniques of academic research, of anthropology, etiquette, fashion.
Etiquette and fashion also. So thank you for that, Muslim Spain.
Various types of medicine, hospitals. Islam is part of our past and our present in all fields of human endeavor. It has helped to create modern Europe. It is part of our own the rights of...
And the video cuts off there. Apologies for that. I'm surprised he didn't say anything about the future. That was quite interesting. It's part of our past and it's part of our present. He didn't say whether or not it's part of our future. But apparently, according to this gentleman, this was back in his glory days as the Sustainable Prince, which is the title that Joan Vian gave to him in her book, which I'm just looking for. I don't know where I've put it. I rearranged all my bookshelves, and now I have no idea where anything is. Oh, I do know where it is. It's down in my little area, which is a collection of books on environmentalism. We have, boom, this book here, Who Will Rule the New World Order? King formerly known as Prince Charles, the Sustainable Prince, by Joan Vian. And this is a really tiny paperback book. It's about 100 pages or so. 110 pages. I haven't read that one yet. Might be a good one to read next, perhaps, to get an insight into his role now that he's king. What kind of thing can we expect from him? What's he going to be doing? But have a look at the price of that book and her books in general, Joan Vian. There's not that many of them available, and they are kind of pricey. But Sustainable Prince. Now he's the king, and he's a massive fan of Muslim Spain, at least, and thinks that maybe they are to thank for all these wonderful things: diplomacy and open borders and fashion. So maybe that gives us an insight as to why Birmingham is now minority white, why Christianity is now a minority religion in the UK. Oops, wrong one. Let me do this. So here's another very quick 7-second video. You don't really need any sound for this one, but this is in a big shopping center, and it sets the scene for what I'm going to talk about in the articles I'm going to show you next, right? So this shopping center, I've been to it. It is a real UK shopping center. It's near Manchester. It's called the Arndale Shopping Center, and you can see this gentleman here just quietly, silently got his prayer mat out, shoes off, and he's engaged in his worship in a busy shopping mall that's full of people, right? So that sets the scene for what I want to talk about next, because I saw this video and the previous ones that I showed looking for preamble ramble materials for tonight's broadcast. And then this video here reminded me of news stories that I have heard elsewhere about a similar practice of silent, quiet, worshipful prayer. And you probably know where I'm going with this. But in case you don't, this is where I'm going. So this is an article on a website called Reason, Free Minds and Free Markets, which I've never been to this website before. I can't advocate their work in any way. But I did find this this article from Emma Camp in last year in October. And the headline is British Man Convicted of Criminal Charges for Praying Silently Near Abortion Clinic. British law allows local governments to enact absurdly censorious orders limiting antisocial behavior. And it just reminded me of this little video here in a shopping mall and this gentleman here. The same actions, right? Quietly praying, keeping yourself to yourself, eyes closed, silently, not causing any bother. So let's learn a little bit about this. In Britain, the article says, it can be a crime to think the wrong thoughts in the wrong place. A handful of people have been arrested or charged in the country simply for praying silently near abortion clinics. This man, Adam Smith Connor, did not attempt to harass, intimidate, or interact in any way with those entering the clinic. Instead, he wordlessly prayed with his head bowed slightly. He wasn't even on clinic property. He was outside the sight line of the clinic itself, so he wasn't even in line of sight, standing around the corner somewhere. He was questioned by police, and he was charged with violating a public spaces protection order, or a PISPO. PISPO? It sounds a bit like piss pot or piss poor. Maybe we should just call it a piss poor. But this is the PSPO, and this is a broad censorship order enabled by the 2014 Anti-Social Behavior Crime and Policing Act. Under this law, local authorities can obtain special status for some public places, allowing them to ban a huge range of conduct. British towns have obtained piss poors to ban the homeless from sleeping outside. How dare the homeless sleep outside? And to ban swearing. So I should probably rethink my pronunciation of this particular acronym, if that is the case. The piss poor, in Smith Connor's case, the PSPO, barred individuals from engaging in quote-unquote prayer, quote, sprinkling holy water on the ground, and, quote, crossing themselves, so doing the sign of the cross. Smith Connor violated this order in 2022, November, and he was convicted and sentenced earlier this month to a conditional discharge. And this is similar to probation. He was ordered to pay approximately $11,709 in prosecution fees. So that sounds to me like he had to pay for his own prosecution, which is just crazy. The court's reasoning betrayed the absurdly censorious nature of the local law. The court said, quote, in its decision, the court reasoned that his prayer amounted to disapproval of abortion because, at one point, his head was seen slightly bowed and his hands were clasped. Okay, so the messaging here is that if your head is slightly bowed and your hands are clasped, that can be taken as a sign of disapproval. So be very hyper aware of any time you are slightly bowing your head or clasping your hands, because anyone around you who feels that you are disapproving of them, their lifestyle, their clothing, their outfits, whatever, could hold this against you, and you could be prosecuted for it and forced to pay $11,709. The judge, Orla Austin, says he was capable of being seen. He was capable of being seen. Not that he was seen, not that anybody noticed him. It was possible that somebody might potentially be able to maybe see him. And he was engaged in prayer, and it would have been perceptible to an observer. Who is this judge? Isn't that the most retarded nonsense you've ever heard? And that's apparently a quote from a judge. So these are the people we've got running our... maybe it would be better to have Sharia court systems here if these are the kind of morons that are running our justice and court system, right? So absolutely bonkers story there, and incredible that this is going on. But wait, there's more. So this is from The Independent. This is November 2019. It's an older story. This is the headline is "The man arrested for praying outside abortion clinic sees case against him collapse." Which you think, okay, great, good. The case didn't stick. The case collapsed. But why did it collapse? Was it because it's a ridiculous thing to charge people for? Was it because it's a ridiculous thing to call a crime? No. Not at all. Not at all. So the writer tells us, a man who was arrested after praying outside an abortion clinic has had charges against him dropped after officers failed to caution him before his arrest. So it was a loophole. The officers didn't go through their due process and say the right words before they arrested him, and that is why the case was dropped. Nothing to do with the fact that he was just praying and he wasn't harassing people, he wasn't assaulting people. He was praying out loud, though. Apparently he said he was praying to God to end the shedding of innocent blood, and he was praying to have mercy upon the mothers. And apparently, because he was saying those words out loud, then this counts as an act of approval or disapproval towards abortion. And therefore, this wheelchair user was picked up, chucked in a van, kidnapped, in other words, and thrown in a cage. So, there you are. The Crown Prosecution Service sent Mr. Hacking a letter confirming the charges had been dropped, as there was not enough evidence to provide a realistic prospect of conviction. A spokesperson for Marie Stopes, which is the abortion clinic, said it was disappointing. So, very disappointing. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Mr. Hacking's actions had not led to a conviction after willfully flouting the protection order designed to protect those using the service from harassment and intimidation. So harassment and intimidation is apparently praying to God to have mercy upon people and praying to God to end the shedding of innocent blood. That counts as harassment and intimidation in the eyes of some spokesperson who works for Marie Stopes. So there you are. Okay, and so it goes back. It's not just a recent phenomenon. This is 2019. So here's a story in the Telegraph, which is again more recent, August 2024. This is a woman who was arrested for silent prayer. Again, silent prayer. This woman wasn't speaking, just like the first guy we read about. She won a £13,000 payout. And she got an apology. So they actually said sorry in her case. She was first arrested in November 2022 for silently praying in a buffer zone in streets imposed by local authorities around an abortion clinic. So the buffer zone is what's been defined by the local authorities as an area that has to be, that it is now a crime in which, if you're in that buffer zone, you're not allowed to express approval or disapproval with respect to issues related to abortion services by any means. So that's what the piss poor, the Public Spaces Protection Order is there for. It enforces a buffer zone which bans expressions of approval or disapproval. And apparently they can read minds, and they know that if you're standing there silently, so the thing is, the only, like, approval or disapproval, if you're nodding your head, that's probably taken as approval. If you're shaking your head, disapproval. If you're standing there silently doing nothing, how do they know whether it's approval or disapproval? I suppose they're just hedging their bets, playing it safe and assuming that you are disapproving, right? They got to get the numbers up. They got to employ police, keep them in a job. And then this story we just read links to this one, which is April 2024, about how these busybody charters, which are the PSPOs we were just learning about, are apparently being shelved. And this headline, but I read the article and it's a little bit misleading. It says free speech victory as councils shelve busybody charters. And really, that's not what's happening at all. It talks a little bit here. It says free speech campaigners have declared a victory in their fight against busybody charters as councils have started to shelve the measures. So councils have started to shelve the measures is a bit misleading, in my opinion. But this is because they've been getting legal challenges. Local authorities across the country have used public spaces protection orders to impose increasing numbers of fines of up to £1,000 for a range of activities, including loitering, swearing, or walking a dog in the wrong place. There you are. Bryn Harris, the FSU weighed in, which is the Free Speech Union. These guys, the Free Speech Union, sounds good. We need free speech. These boys are protecting it, but they're massive. They're on the list of UK Friends of Israel, which means UK Friends of Zionists. And so that's something to bear in mind. Even though they are sticking up for free speech in certain ways, in other ways they are very much against free speech, such as if you have criticisms of a certain group of people. Or if you have questions about a certain group of people, then Free Speech Union will not be fighting your corner. But if you're getting done for walking your dog in the wrong place, they will stick up for you. But anyway, Bryn Harris, the FSU's chief legal counsel, said the use of PSPOs has become out of control. It seems that councils are overusing them, essentially to set their own local criminal laws, he said. One of the main problems is that a lot of them are criminalizing conduct which causes alarm or distress, with no safeguards for free speech. This could end up criminalizing completely legitimate free speech. Could it? That's the whole point of these. This could. They always talk in like these modal verbs. Could, might, may. To soften things up and to kind of hide the obvious, overt, clear intention of these laws and these these powers that the local authorities are getting. So the whole point of it is to criminalize legitimate free speech, or at least to browbeat, bully, and intimidate people into thinking very carefully about what they say publicly. It tells us a little bit about these piss pourers. They were set up. They were aimed at helping councils crack down on issues like prostitution or drinking alcohol. Who could argue with that, right? Obviously, it would be good if we could crack down on alcohol usage and prostitution. But of course, it always starts with this kind of, we're doing it for your protection and your benefit, to reduce crime, to help people who are being exploited. And then it ends up, you're getting chucked into the back of a van for praying, or you're getting slapped with a massive fine for standing with your head slightly bowed. So it's ridiculous. Why is that a problem? Mr. Harris asked. Let's say you want to protest on the streets and this causes someone distress. That makes you liable, even if you didn't intend it and couldn't have foreseen it. So this is the problem. It's this subjective sense of distress. If another person claims that you are causing them distress, then the police will can show up at your door and arrest you, cart you off, kidnap you, and chuck you in a cell overnight, just because of somebody's precious feelings. And no mention as to how you prove a person experienced distress, no definition of the word distress and how to tell whether or not it has taken place. You just need one person to say, "Oh, I'm a bit upset," and the police will enforce that, which is just absolutely bonkers. So we've got a quote here from the leader of Redbridge Council and London Council's executive member for crime and public protection. His name, or her name, is Jas Athwal. He says, "We are the first council in London using our piss poll to enforce against catcalling and harassment." So no catcalling, right? No expressing appreciation for somebody's beauty in any way, because what is catcalling exactly? You're not allowed to show any more that you think somebody is attractive or beautiful. That can be considered a crime. right? So what do people do? They stare at the ground, they mind their own business, they stare at their phone. Nobody interacts with each other anymore because we're getting into this like sort of paranoid communist type system where everybody's informing on everybody else all the time. Sort of like we saw a little bit of that back in the Big C event where people were calling each other out for breaking rules and telling over each other to the police and whatnot. It's all the same sort of thing, getting people to police each other, to rat each other out, to be suspicious of each other, and to find any excuse for those closet authoritarians to give them power to wield over other people. So it's often like people who feel powerless in their own lives. Maybe they were bullied when they were at school. Maybe their life hasn't turned out the way they want. People don't respect them. People don't look up to them because they haven't earned the respect and the appreciation of the people around them. They're the kind of people who then turn to beating down and bullying and wielding the weapons of the state against other people for things such as catcalling, or smoking a cigarette in the wrong place, or walking a dog in the wrong place, or not picking up a dog poo or something like this. It's these like very miserly, lonely, often like ground down, broken individuals who engage in this type of behavior. And unfortunately, there's a lot of them because the system is designed to do that to people and to create a lot of them. So it's a perfect recipe for disaster. But anyway, back to Jas Athwal says, we're supporting covert police operations in the borough to ensure perpetrators are brought to justice. So money is being spent, public money is being spent on covert police operations because of catcalling and harassment. I mean, harassment could be pretty bad, right? Catcalling could be pretty bad. It might be really out of hand. It might be something that you need an intervention for. But as we've seen in the previous articles, this is being used to target people who are praying silently in their heads. Redbridge Council responded, confirming that they will not renew the measure when it expires in August. So that's good news, right? They this PSPO that they had in place, they said, okay, it's done its job now. We're not going to renew it. Cumberland Council is proposing to update its existing PSPO by introducing a code of conduct for traders and street performers to adhere to. This states that they must always be courteous to members of the public and must also be calm and polite. Presumably this is no matter what the members of the public do to them, right? So the members of the public could, get the bum out or maybe steal some money from their little hat, although it's all cards now, isn't it? So you don't really have the hat with money in it anymore for the street performers. But heckling, shouting, being rude, it could go one way, and if they do it back, Cumberland Council is going to come after you and maybe slap you with a fine for not adhering to the code of conduct for traders and street performers. The problem is with all these codes of conduct and these rules, they cannot be followed 100% all of the time by every person, even though that's what they're designed to do, is to standardize behavior and make sure everybody at all times is behaving according to what the state deems to be appropriate. But you're never going to do that because people are individuals and we have different personalities, psychological aspects to our personalities. We've got different backgrounds, opinions, ideas about the world and how it works. And all this kind of policing does is it stops people from engaging with each other out of fear of getting slapped with a fine or being dragged to court and having to pay exorbitant, ridiculous fees for, legal defense or going through that whole process, right? So it's just a way to attack social cohesion and inject a lot of fear and stress and anxiety, and that's all it is. It's not for your benefit. It's not for the safety and the well-being of anybody at all. And there's another quote here from a Redbridge Council spokesperson who says that this PSPO is due to expire in August. Before renewing a PSPO, we carefully review evidence to ascertain whether it's still required. In this case, evidence shows the PSPO has been effective and is no longer required for the whole area it covers. Instead, we're exploring a similar PSPO for a smaller area. The decision process is evidence-based. Yes, of course it is. Of course, it's scientific and evidence-based, and you've got an expert telling you that this has to happen. And we must listen to the expert because they've got a white coat and a clipboard and they're smarter than you, and you're a moron. right? So don't worry, the PISPO is not being renewed in August. We're just going to have a similar one for a smaller area. So, massive win for free speech there, isn't it? What a real free speech victory that is. They're gonna keep the PISPO, keep a similar one, and just reduce the area that it applies to. Yeah, massive win. Thanks, Free Speech Union, for fighting so hard for free speech. Heroes. Okay. This is a massive article, so I might have to skip through a few of the bits that I've highlighted, but this is a good summary article of all the stuff we've just been covering, but it gives even more examples and background. So this is from the Free Press, another website that I can't advocate for. It's my first time here, but let's have a look. This is she was arrested for praying in her head. And it tells us that even organizing pro-life meetings in your own home may be a criminal offense. So this is a story of Emma, who the writer says asked not to be named. I'm not sure how that works. It says, on October the 4th, Emma, who asked not to be named, got a letter from the Scottish government. So I think what that's saying is that Emma's not her real name, right? So if you know somebody called Emma who has been causing distress to people who want to get abortions, don't automatically assume this article's about her, right? And go and kick down the door and get angry with her, because Emma, I think, is a pseudonym. Anyway, she received a letter from the Scottish government addressed, "Dear resident," and the purpose of the letter was to alert her that her home, due to its proximity to the hospital, is now in an abortion censorship zone. Right? This is due to the UK's brand new Safe Access Law, which came into effect in September and made it a criminal offence to do anything within 200 metres of an abortion facility that could, quote, influence someone's decision to access, provide, or facilitate an abortion. So you're not allowed to do anything that could influence someone's decision. So you're not allowed to influence people's decision within 200 metres. Isn't that strange? Isn't that weird? You know, if you had like a shop that sells whiskey, imagine you want to stand outside the shop and you're trying to convince an alcoholic not to go and buy more alcohol, right? I don't know why I picked whiskey there, but that's fine. You're allowed to influence the alcoholic who's going to go and buy more alcohol. You're allowed to influence presumably the heroin addict who wants to go and buy more heroin, and try and talk them out of it. Or ask them to question that decision, or maybe just delay it a little bit to give them time to think. Maybe they're emotional. Maybe they need to just a good meal and a good night's sleep, and then the craving will pass. In the case of heroin, that's unlikely. But you know, that could help somebody who maybe they're going to relapse on smoking cigarettes, for example, right? Absolutely fine to try and help other people and give them space and to explore that decision. But in the case of abortions, you are not allowed to influence someone's decision. It's just crazy. Why that one thing in particular? You know, you got to ask that question. So, in this letter, the Scottish government said, even activities in a private place, such as a house. Thank you for that example, Scottish government. Just in case, for the heart of thinking, you're like wondering, what is a private place? What is a private place? Oh, what is it? Because, I mean, you know, our children might actually struggle with knowing what a private place is, because they might grow up never actually knowing anything about privacy, right? So that actually could be a little nod as to where things are going. We might have people in the future who have no idea what a private place is and need the Scottish government to give them a little example in parentheses, such as a house. I think they included it just because they sent this letter to this person's house. Activities in a private place, the Scottish government said, such as a house, within the area, so that's the area, the 200 meters around the abortion clinic, could be an offense if they can be seen or heard within the zone and are done intentionally or recklessly. So I just interrupted that and probably totally messed up the flow of people's understanding. But basically what they're saying is, if your house is within 200 meters of an abortion facility, then the activities in your house could be classed as a criminal offense if they can be seen or heard within the zone, right? So you have to be out of sight and completely silent So you can you can object to abortion as long as nobody can see you and you do it totally silently, then it's fine. But if your activity can be seen and heard within the 200 meters of an abortion facility, even if it's inside your own home, then that could be a criminal offence according to the Scottish government. Which is crazy. The maximum fine is £10,000. And it passed in the Scottish Parliament by 118 votes to 1. What? I want to know who this one hero is here. Find out who they are and vote for them. The rest of the UK is doing the same. And guess what? They passed it on October the 31st. Well, of course they did. Halloween. Yeah. No coincidence there. I mean, obviously just a coincidence. And the fine's going to be unlimited, apparently, in England and Wales. So there's not even going to be a cap. They can fine you as much as they want. Just bonkers. Here's our guy again, Adam Smith Connor. We learned a little bit more about his story here, where it says that... it was on he paid off his fee with crowdfunding, which is good to hear. That's quite a good outcome, that people chucked in a few quid and helped him to pay off his fine. There was a little bit about what the officers said to him. They asked him, "What is the nature of your prayer? What is the nature of your prayer? What are you thinking silently in your head?" That is literally the policing of thought, right? The police have no business knowing what's going on in your mind, and you have no obligation to answer the question if they ask you. Just say to them, "Am I obligated to answer that question?" And they'll say, "No, you're not." And then say, "Thank you very much, officer. Have a good day. Goodbye." But the same day he was on trial, there was also a trial going of Olivia Tosiki-Bolt. She was a retired scientist, 64 years old, faced the same charges, but her alleged offense is standing outside an abortion clinic in March 2023 with a sign that read, "Here to talk if you want." Oh my gosh, can you believe the audacity? The absolute barefaced cheek of this woman offering to talk to women who are going to get abortions. How dare she? And then we have the case of Isabel Vaughan Spruce, who's 47, arrested for silently praying. And this is her here. There's a video of her. Then it talks a little bit about Father Sean. He's 34, and he was charged with 2 counts of silent prayer in the same city. So twice, repeat offender, as well as parking near an abortion clinic with an Unborn Lives Matter bumper sticker. Holding a sign that said, "Praying for free speech." So Father Sean McGough, he's been hit harder than anyone else. He's a priest. That's probably a coincidence. I'm sure it's not persecution of Christians. No, wouldn't be that. In a multicultural country such as ours, where all faiths are celebrated equally, definitely couldn't be Christian persecution. This guy is obviously just a piece of work with his signs and his bumper stickers. Just over a year ago, another case of Patrick Parks, 57 years old, praying silently outside an abortion clinic in Birmingham, and he was threatened by police with a fine, and they said to him, "Kindly move elsewhere outside the exclusion zone where you've got your human rights." So the implication there being that inside the exclusion zone, your human rights do not apply. Some sort of magical force field that when you pass through it, your human rights disappear and are no longer applicable. So you cannot expect to hold them inside the exclusion zone, the magical exclusion zone. So these people are obviously warlocks and wizards because they can change the fabric of reality so that in one place you have human rights and in another place you don't. That's pretty impressive. Maybe we shouldn't really mess with them, should we, if they've got that kind of power. Going on with the article, it says, in Britain, people who post offensive, quote-unquote offensive, so again, the subjective interpretation of what constitutes offensive comes into play. But if you do that, if you post a comment online and somebody complains about it and they get offended, then you can get a harsher sentence than a sex offender. Yeah, that's Britain in 2024, 2025. So going on with the story, we've got in 2014, so this is a little background and history to how we got here. In 2014, When the Conservative government introduced the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act, it assumed that local authorities would create their own criminal offences for relatively minor public nuisances. Yeah, sure. Well, we had no idea they were going to use this act for what they did. We didn't know. We thought they were just going to clean up the streets and get rid of dog poo. We had no idea they were going to use it for these purposes. No, of course not. Who could have seen that coming? Who could have predicted flying planes into buildings? Nobody can predict that, can they? Jeremiah Igunubole is a lawyer, and he's quoted here. Parliament certainly didn't intend for this act to be used in this way that it's currently being used. Well, I think that's very naive if he believes what he just said there. But anyway, moving on. As a result, 5 local councils across the UK, Manchester, Birmingham and Bournemouth, and 2 London districts have been free to implement abortion censorship zones. What do you know about these? What do you notice about all these places? Manchester, Birmingham, London. These are the places where white people are becoming minorities. I think that's already happened in the case of Manchester, Birmingham and London. So it's an interesting correlation there. You know, it starts in the cities, doesn't it? And then it spreads out after that. So, and he says as well in the article, the language of these ordinances, so that's the laws and the rules and the regulations and the acts, often explicitly targets religious activity. And again, it targets all religious activity equally, okay? There's no preference. It doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, if you're Muslim, if you are Jewish, if you are Christian. All religious activity is persecuted and targeted equally, obviously, right? I think, maybe, not sure. Father Goff, so back to this gentleman here, he was summoned to the police station in Birmingham in December 2022. He was grilled on what message his clerical clothing had sent to service users within the zone. So he was grilled. How dare you walk around in your priest outfit? What kind of message does that send to people who want to get abortions? You need to think about this. What kind of message are you sending walking around in your priestly attire with your little white collar? And he too was also asked what he was praying about. It's just bizarre. It is absolutely bizarre that we are having to even talk about this. Father Goff, I think it's Goff, I guess that's how you pronounce it. He told the Free Press what he told the police, that he was praying that God's grace will come upon those inside the facility. Well, there's your mistake there, Father Goff. Never answer any questions the police ask you. That's rule number 1. We all get trained to answer the police's questions by the television and the movies, right? It's always like, hey, what are you doing here? And, oh, am I in trouble, officer? What's the problem? No, don't answer the question. And if you are going to say something, say, am I obligated to answer that question? Or say, are you? What crime am I being? Am I being detained? Or what crime am I being arrested for? Am I under arrest? Always be the one asking the question. Never answer the question. That's a top tip. But the police officer here asked him, what does the word grace mean? So it's good to know that we have the brightest and the best working in our police. Obviously, someone needs to buy this guy a thesaurus. You know, this might not be he might genuinely not know. Who knows what ethnicity, what culture, what background this police officer has. English might not be his first language, might not even be his second language. So he could have genuinely been stumped there about the meaning of this word. But Father Goff was charged with protesting and engaging in an act that is intimidating to service users. Protesting, engaging in an act that is intimidating, having a bumper sticker. Vaughan Spruce, so this is back to this lady down here. She was arrested when she was standing alone outside the same abortion clinic after it had closed. So the place wasn't even open. People weren't even going inside and out of it. The place was shut, and she got arrested for standing outside it. After searching her body and hair, the police took her to the station and showed her photographs of herself standing outside the clinic on earlier occasions. They asked if she had been praying when they were taken. Can you believe this? I can't even believe I'm reading this. I hope I hope this article is satire, and I've been duped, and this is actually a lot of just at the bottom it's like, was this published on April the 1st? No, it wasn't published on April the 1st, so it's not an April Fool's, unfortunately. Where was I? Here. So she was asked, she was shown pictures of herself standing outside a building that had ceased operating for the day, and asked if she was praying. This is Orwellian type stuff here, I hope you realize. But she got her own back. Hang on, let me just I skipped ahead a little bit here. She was arrested again, and the officer said, "You've said you're engaged in prayer, which is the offense." The officer explained. She was later released, but one of the conditions of her bail was that she refrain from visiting a wider zone around the abortion censorship zone, which included her church. So one of the conditions of her bail was not to go to church. Literally. But she got her own back by suing the police, and I think she won and got £13,000 out of it. But they agreed to a settlement, and in the other article, not this one, it says they did not admit to any wrongdoing, but they settled for $13,000. They paid her £13,000. So just absolutely crazy stuff. And then a bit of a conclusion here, and then we'll wrap up our preamble ramble. Those who advocate for abortion censorship zones claim they are essential to protect women from anti-abortion fanatics. Yes, if you are against abortion, then you're a fanatic. The behavior we've seen outside our clinics includes spitting, calling women murderers, crying out, "Mummy, mummy," to women as they enter or leave. That is all bad taste if that is happening. That's not good. But the writer makes a very important point here, which is it's worth noting that spitting at someone or verbally abusing them are already considered illegal under existing British law. So the point being that these behaviors are already illegal. You don't need extra special, magical human rights force fields around these that include private property and private spaces such as homes and churches, right? It's already covered this kind of behavior under existing British law. And then a little bit further down, hang on, before we get to that, there's a bit here about a clinic manager who told reporters in 2023 that in her experience, anti-abortion activists, so they're activists now, not fanatics, outside clinics are not particularly shouting, and they're not waving banners. Rather, they are loudly praying, and in some ways, that's more intimidating. So this person would prefer that the anti-abortion fanatics / activists were waving banners and shouting, but the fact that they're not doing that and they're just loudly praying, she thinks is even worse. It's more intimidating because it's done loud enough that you can hear, but quietly enough that you're not disturbing anybody apart from who's walking in. I don't know. I'm just lost for words. I'm not. I've got loads to say. We got a whole 2 hours left to go on the broadcast, so don't worry. But this bit was really interesting. So Sajid Javid, when he was British Home Secretary, he investigated anti-abortion activity, and he concluded that the existing law was sufficient to deal with it, and introducing national buffer zones would not be a proportionate response. He said that the main activities of these anti-abortion fanatics was praying, displaying banners, and handing out leaflets, and offering to talk, as we saw in the other example. So Sajid Javid even says there's no reason for these magical force field human rights buffer zones, and yet they got rolled out anyway under the Conservative Party's watch. Of course they did. However, the Conservative Party did attempt to introduce protection for silent prayer. So, thanks for that, Conservatives. But the new Labour government, elected in July, moved ahead without that protection. Right, so thanks for that. Fabian Starmer. The newly appointed safeguarding minister. Aren't you happy and glad and able to sleep more soundly at night, knowing that Jess Phillips, your safeguarding minister, is working hard and diligently to protect you from people praying silently? We will not sit back and tolerate harassment, abuse, and intimidation, even though Sajid Javid says none of that was happening. We will not tolerate the stuff that isn't happening as people exercise their legal right to health care. So that's going to get abortions. Which is why we have fast-tracked this measure to get it up and running without further delay and without any sort of protection for silent prayer. So there you are. That's all you need to know, really. A little bit more here from Father Goff about this idea of two-tier policing. He says that in February 2020, he was praying outside the Birmingham abortion clinic when a man, Noel Green, approached him in his van. The Father Goff, began filming as Green got out of his vehicle and walked toward him, accusing him of bullying girls, calling him a wanker and a fucking prick, and asking whether the women having abortions had been raped by a priest. At one point, Green says, "I'll rip your fucking throat out." I won't play the video of this delightful character. So this is a pro-abortion fanatic, right? Is what we maybe I should play this video. I haven't seen it, but I don't know. Me reading the quote is probably enough. But this is the kind of behavior that pro-abortion fanatics get up to, right? And what's the outcome of this? Well, the article, the writer tells us that under British law, this short encounter could involve multiple criminal offences, common assault, threatening, abusive or insulting words, immediate unlawful violence. And all of this can be found to be more serious if it's aggravated by religious hostility, which I think, making this kind of accusation, asking whether the women have been raped by priests, suggests that it is motivated by religious hostility. It says if this pro-abortion fanatic were convicted of any of the above, he could be looking at a 2-year prison sentence. Father Goff shared a video of the incident with the police and asked to press charges, but instead they instructed Green to write the priest a letter of apology, which arrived 6 months later. Can you believe that? So that's how they deal with pro-abortion fanatics versus how they deal with anti-abortion fanatics and activists. So, yeah, just astounding, really. So back to Emma, who we started learning about at the beginning of the article. It says, one of the things that scared her when she got her letter from the Scottish government was that the law seemed arbitrary. And this is the key word, arbitrary. The whole point of these sort of rules and these laws and these acts and these punishments is that everything is arbitrary. Nobody knows where they stand. Everybody is on eggshells all the time. They don't know what they can and can't say. And this shuts down honest expression. This shuts down communication. This shuts down people's willingness to interact with each other and talk about important issues. This is an important issue, right? Women choosing to have an abortion. It's not a black and white issue. It's very nuanced. There's all sorts of factors in play. This is something that people should be able to talk about and discuss openly to come to some sort of solution for, right? And instead, they set up all these arbitrary rules and regs and they enforce them willy-nilly in a way that is totally inconsistent across the board of people who could be prosecuted. And that keeps everyone quiet and fearful and scared to put their head out above the parapet and say anything about these important issues, right? The reason being, normal people cannot understand at which point they will be incurring criminal liability. And that is exactly the point and the purpose and the reason behind this kind of legislating of behavior. I feel good to have got that rant off my chest. Final point of this article, Vaughan Spruce believes that censorship zones should concern everyone, pro-life and pro-choice alike. She says, it might be Christians today, but it could be anyone tomorrow who falls foul of what the government deems is appropriate to think. So there you are. Really excellent article. If you only read one article on this topic, I'd recommend this one. I found this totally by accident, but I was really impressed with it. And I'm very happy that I got it on the record tonight. I'll just give a shout out to some other people who've dropped into the chat. We've got ESP over on Odyssey. We've got Faith on Rumble, Cyril's Way, Doris K, Tammy, LJ over on YouTube. So good to see you all as well. Got some new faces and new names as well. I'm going to catch up on your comments in a moment. Hope you enjoyed that little preamble ramble. I've got one little bit to show you. This is a clip that came across my radar, I think from the same group, the Traditional Britain group. And it's a lovely short clip, people singing. And, you know, this is what I would like to see more of, to be perfectly frank. Just as Frank leaves a comment in YouTube, I'm going to be Frank. And I'm going to play this little clip. And hopefully it will give you a little peace of mind, a little uplifting end to our preamble ramble tonight, which is kind of bleak, alarming stuff, really. But anyway, let me hit play on this and we can listen to this wonderful group of people singing.
Until the Lord calls me to sit at his hand, for this is my Eden, and I'm not alone. For this is my Cornwall, and this is my home.
This is my home indeed. Yeah, beautiful. I imagine the energy there in that place on that day as people gathered to sing a song about their home and to take pride in where they are from. I believe this was in Cornwall somewhere. Lovely. Just really beautiful to see. And, you know, more of this, please, everybody. And that is the end of our preamble ramble for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it very much. I really do. So, before we get into tonight's reading, I'll just remind people that if at any point you feel so moved to support the show, you can do so over at allmylinks.com/HazeReviews. It's got everything you need. I'm not going to go through all these again. You've probably heard me do it 10 times by now. But the link is pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. If at any moment you would like to send, find my email address, shoot me an email, get in touch, or follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Telegram. Find out where I broadcast. All that stuff is there. You can do it. It's all there, right there. I made that page just for you. And of course, the Devised community is up and running. If you want to see more of what I'm interested in, you can join the Devised community, where we have on the calendar up here meetings every Wednesday and Saturday, which are held on Zoom. You can join up, go to the calendar, and you can get the Zoom link here and join the call and come off mute and put your camera on and talk to me and the other people on the call, or don't. You can just join the meeting and keep muted and keep the camera off and just listen in, right? There's no pressure to participate, but it is good to have people there to hear the discussion. I'm so blessed that the people who hang out in my audience are very intelligent, often more intelligent than me, and have a wealth of experience, knowledge to share, as people who like books and reading tend to do. And so this is a place where we can hang out, get to know each other, build some relationships, and learn from each other. We have a Screenaholics Anonymous meeting, which is just a casual meeting, not recorded, no script, no plan, just hang out, talk to each other. We have a loose theme of screen addiction, but it's not rigid. We can go with whatever people want to talk about. And then we have a book club, and currently we're reading through 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television, and it is a really, really good book. I'm very much enjoying it, and people who've shown up for those sessions have enjoyed it too, and they've been adding lots of context, analysis, insights, which has really made this a very rich learning experience. And if you've missed the previous ones and you're like, well, I can't join the book club now because I've missed, you're halfway through the book at this point. Fear not, because you can go to the classroom section, you can hit this little box here, and you can watch all the replays. Look at that. And then underneath the video, I have links to the things discussed in the call. So we got AJ's Telegram group there, Open Minds Inc., fantastic Telegram group. I really recommend people sign up to that. In the most recent chapter 7, we were discussing Friedrich Hayek, Keynesian economics versus Austrian economics. We were looking at Masaru Emoto and his work with water, and discussing the pre-programming, sorry, the what do you call it, where they implant the idea ahead of time. Predictive programming, that's it. That in the form of a board game, which was a game called Pandemic, which came out in 2007. It's a pretty good game, actually. But fear not, if you are late to the party and only just signing up, you can catch all the replays on the Classroom. But you don't even need to have caught up with all the replays to enjoy and get value from and take part in the book club. There'll be something there to learn. And so that's the Classroom and the calendar. And also, you can get a link to my private Telegram group chat, where I hang out all day, every day, pretty much. And we got a really good group of people in there as well who like to help everybody uplift their understanding of what the hell is going on in the world. So that is there for you. And it would be very good to see you in there indeed. And that is the end of tonight's Preamble Ramble. How are we doing? 8:15. Oh, that's not too bad, actually. I thought it was going to take me much longer to get through all that stuff. So thank you very much indeed for your patience and your kind attention. And we are going to get over to the book very shortly, after I just have a look at some of the chats and the messages that we've got. So we've got over on Rumble Turb saying, anyone that says Charlie has changed recently is delusional. Tell me we are slaves or prisoners without saying we're slaves or prisoners. Yeah, I can do that, actually. I can tell you exactly how that is the case without saying that is the case. Try withdraw your consent from the liberal democracy in which you live in. Try and withdraw your participation, your consent, and see what happens. That's all you need to know. It is not a consent-based system. All right, so over on YouTube, we've got quite a few comments to get through. So apologies if I miss things or I can't read out everybody's comments. We do have to, we have got a fair bit of reading to get through tonight. But we got Dars K, who I think is new here. So welcome. And has heard us talking on Cutting Through the Matrix with Melissa. Oh, wonderful. I love Melissa and Alan Watt and the whole, it's a privilege and a real honor to be involved with the group that's formed there around the book club and around Melissa and Alan and his work. It's wonderful. So, so I think, yeah, that's great that you're into that stuff, and welcome. Good to have you here. Mindhack says, what a joke. The government, it's like the film Demolition Man. Yes. I need to rewatch that because apparently the film Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes has an immense amount, I think it's Wesley Snipes, has an immense amount of predictive programming with instant fines for bad language and so on. So check that out. Frank Lennon says, overt war on Christianity. It is kind of looking a bit like that, isn't it? Mindhack says, this is painful to listen to, but Canada is not much better. I can believe that. Doris K says, the chat's being monitored, certain comments not getting through. That's entirely down to YouTube. That's not me. I don't have any mods in the chat. I don't have anybody monitoring or deleting. I don't even know if I can delete comments from the chat. I've got this three little... yeah, so it's not me doing it. If that's on YouTube. Try using numbers instead of letters and punctuation as well. That's a good way to get around it. That auto-delete, that the algorithm that it has running. Frank Lennon says, Starmer's Totaliana. Clown world lawfare upon the nation. That's a good way to put it. Lawfare is an excellent term, especially clown world lawfare. Celine Lyon says, crack down on alcohol or closing public houses where locals meet and have conversations. Yeah, exactly. I agree. They've done it a few different ways, right? One, they've made the beer and the lager and you know, the product itself really low quality and horrifically bad for you, and added all sorts of chemicals and additives and nasties have thrown in there. So if you do go and get a drink, it's disgusting stuff that you're putting in your body, not like the stuff they used to make. And then the pubs themselves and the bars are just horrible places. There's screens everywhere. The music's usually too loud, flashing lights, and you can't sit down and chill out and talk and chat and chinwag. It's kind of they've made the actual environment very uncomfortable and horrible. To me, at least, that's how I find it. So yeah, but that's to prevent people from getting together and discussing and talking about things and reflecting and uplifting each other's awareness of what's going on in the world. That's exactly what the purpose is for. Because you can't as easily monitor a bunch of people who are having a conversation around a table in a pub, right? Whereas you can monitor everything that I'm saying into this microphone and publishing on YouTube, and that you're all writing into the chat boxes here, unfortunately. Frank says, it's utterly staggering that reality has devolved into such an irrational, insane, truly clown show. Yes, I have nothing further to add to that. You're 100% on the money there. Cyril's Way, hello. Good to have you here. Says, good evening, Nick. I think the awakened will adapt old lost ways. Telepathy springs to mind. I'm up for that. I'm up for developing a bit of telepathy, definitely, as my grandmother likes to say. Sorry, granny. I'm not allowed to call her grandmother. It's granny. She likes to go, definitely. So, Cyril's Way, let's do it. Let's get telepathic. That way I could send my broadcasts out and I wouldn't have to pay for Virgin Media broadband. And, you know, I could just broadcast it out there and for free. That would be great. Frank Lennon says, our age-old Christian culture is being gone through, as our American friends might say, with a buzzsaw. Yeah, I think it does seem that way. And bravo to those wonderful singers. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's really important to find those examples of communities and people coming together and people doing things that are creative and beautiful and artistic and with love. There's another great video out there, I'll try and dig it up, of a similar sort of a cappella choir group singing on the street, and they're singing a sort of shanty. It's like a sea shanty, but it's a really good one. I don't know if anyone's seen that or knows what I'm talking about, but I'll have to try and dig it up. I have no idea where to find it these days. It was ages ago when I saw it. But it was a similar kind of thing, a real uplifting. I love listening to choirs. You know, it's one of the things that I wish I'd spent more time doing growing up, because there's something really pure and magical about just human voices singing in harmony that is not mediated by technology and electronics, right? Just the a cappella acoustics of voices in a cathedral or an open space even. It's just something really magical and beautiful about that I really appreciate these days. All right, cool. I'm going to have a sip, and then we'll get on with a reading. allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews is where you can find all my stuff. And as you're listening, you could, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that. Excellent, kind activity, which helps the channel reach the right people. Because, you know, it's not about numbers. It's quality, not quantity. But I know there's people out there who for one reason or another can't either get their hands on the books or can't read them themselves. There's a lot of different reasons, actually. I've had messages from people reaching out to me just saying, you know, I'm really grateful for the live readings of the books because I can't read them myself for XYZ reasons. And clicking that like button and sharing a link out here and there and telling people about it and getting the word of mouth going is a real good way for us to find the people who can benefit from this, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. It's not about me. It's about information and raising awareness and helping people understand, isn't it? And Faith, I forgive you for being late. Don't you worry about that. Cool. So, chapter 9. It's quite a short one. I think it's about 5 pages long even. Let's do it. Multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the promotion of cultural diversity within a particular society or geographical area. Why is it a problem? 1. Multiculturalism is by definition a self-contradictory project, claiming as it does to support both difference, diversity, and sameness, equality, at the same time. So that's a really important point to dwell on, that it is self-contradictory, which means it is self-refuting. That's another way to say self-contradictory. It is a self-refuting proposition on the face of it, it cannot exist within a non-contradictory system of logic and sense making, right? So that's a big red flag, in other words. So, and it links back to the article which talked about the arbitrary nature of the magical force fields that delete human rights when you pass through them, that are being set up around abortion centers in the UK. Arbitrary is never a good sign. You want to really get rid of things that are arbitrary and dismiss things that are arbitrary, because they're just made up and there's nothing to back them up and there's no reason to believe in them or take them seriously. So great first point. Number 2, in multiculturalism, minorities are encouraged to assert their identity as well as their political and economic rights, whereas the majority is discouraged from doing so. This leads to loss of control over immigration policy and replacement of the majority population. And these points, I should mention, are referenced by books. The first one is Turner, the second one is Salter. Yeah, this is the problem, right? You celebrate and glorify and venerate the minorities, but do you continue to do that when they become the majority? You know, like in Birmingham now, the white population is now the minority in Birmingham. So now, does that change things? Does that flip things a little bit? Does that mean that the non-white population who are waving their flags have to be considered racist and unwelcoming to the minorities? And do we apply the same attacks to them that we applied to the nationalist native population when they were waving their Union Jacks and trying to drum up some sense of pride in the nation? You know, like, at what point does it flip? And when the minorities become the majority, do the benefits of being in the minority then apply to the whites? Something tells me that's not going to happen. Point 3. Cultural diversity, or the coexistence of distinct cultures within a society, can only be a good thing if and to the extent that it serves the interests of the society in question. Otherwise, it may well become a problem. For example, when it is misused by political or other organizations for their own agendas, when it is imposed by governments against the wishes or interests of the affected population. I think this is the absolutely key critical one. Who voted on this? Who asked for it? Who was 2 generations ago sitting around in, I don't know, Luton or Rotherham or anywhere and saying, you know what this place needs? More non-native people. It's really, I hate the fact that this place is just full of native people, and I'm bored, and I don't like it anymore, and I want some non-native people to be here. Do you know what? I'm going to write to my politician, and I'm going to demand that we import some non-native people to spice things up a bit and make this place better, because diversity is better, right? I don't know. I don't know if anybody did write those letters. I suspect they didn't. And this has been done against the wishes or interests of the affected people and population. But continuing with the list, when it is misused by an alien culture to impose itself on the indigenous culture or cultures, and lastly, when one of the cultures promoted, e.g. Islam, is incompatible with the others. That's a very important point too. How do you know that the people you're importing are bringing with them a worldview and a set of values and behaviors and cultural expectations that are going to slot in and mix well with the cultures and the values and the belief systems of the native population? Like, that is some complex slotting in. And who's assessing that, and who's checking for compatibility, and who's putting care and attention into that problem? No one. And they're just pretending that that isn't a problem. And if you point it out and mention it and talk about it, you're a racist. That's how that problem's being dealt with. So, what are the origins of multiculturalism? Multiculturalism originated in Milner-Fabian circles. The original general assumption had been that British society should have one culture and that all immigrants would be assimilated into British society. In the 1930s, leading Labourite R.H. Tawney wrote, quite correctly, that without a common culture, a community is not a community at all. In 1963, the Conservative chairman of the Middlesex County Council Education Committee, Sir Archer Hoare, said, quote, "A separate racial community in our midst would be contrary to the English way of life, and the only satisfactory long-term solution must be that immigrant pupils should be integrated in the general community." Similarly, in its 1964 report, the Commonwealth Immigrants Advisory Council, set up by Conservative Home Secretary R.A. Butler to examine arrangements made by local councils to assist Commonwealth immigrants to adapt themselves to British culture, stated, quote, "A national system cannot be expected to perpetuate the different values of immigrant groups." However, the interpretation of integration gradually began to shift from assimilation to cultural pluralism, and this shift can be traced to Milner-Fabian interests. The idea of cultural pluralism was developed in the early 1900s by leading Milner Group member John Buchan, later Lord Tweedsmuir. They have some crazy names. John Buchan is a much easier name to say. He was one of Lord Milner's lieutenants in South Africa, where he aimed to fuse the different local and imported races and cultures for the purpose of imperial unity. Originally from Scotland, Buchan thought of himself as Scottish, British, and South African all at the same time. As Governor-General of Canada in the 1930s, Buchan added a new Canadian identity to his already motley collection and systematically promoted his view that the strongest nations are those that are made up of different racial elements, by which he also meant cultural elements. Although this later became official Canadian state policy, it is indisputable that it originated in Milner-Fabian empire politics. Thus, multiculturalism is not a naturally occurring phenomenon, but an artificial device consciously developed by the international money power as an instrument for world domination. And I think part of the reason that it is an instrument for world domination is that it weakens nations. It makes people easier to conquer because it's divide and conquer, right? So if you have a nation that's largely homogenous and they have the same religious beliefs and practices and cultural touchstones and the same narrative about their history and their ancestors, and they share in the same festive dates and practices and cuisine and ways of celebrating and dressing, then they're going to come together and resist forces that are trying to infiltrate and take over that place. But if you have, conversely, a country that's made up of a bunch of different cultures, religious identities, different languages, different nationalities, then you can play them off against each other, weaken that overall sense of unity in order to infiltrate and gain control of that place. It's pretty obvious what I just said there, so apologies if I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but sometimes I just start thinking and ranting and explaining things just in case. There could be somebody out there who hasn't heard that point explained like that before. So to you, I hope that was helpful. But, I think it's clear that the people who are unified over their beliefs and their culture are going to be stronger together than those who are not. So, continuing. In addition, Buchan's multiculturalism was meant for the dominions and not for the United Kingdom itself. Despite its British origins, therefore, state-imposed multiculturalism arrived in the UK via South Africa, Canada, and above all the USA. In the 1950s, leading Fabian Society members like Hugh Gateskill, C.A.R. Crossland, and Roy Jenkins, who were on the payroll of international money interests, began to, quote, modernize British society after the model of American society, and the Labour Party after the model of the US Democratic Party, launching a campaign of systematic promotion of American culture. And that campaign was long-running, is long-running. You know, I certainly was indoctrinated with American culture growing up. A lot of the TV shows I saw. In fact, I went on holiday to America when I was maybe 11 or 12. And I cried in the airport when we had to leave, because I just loved it. All the rides, Universal Studios. We stayed with relatives who had a big house and a swimming pool and the biggest television I'd ever seen in my life. And when it came time to leave, I just thought, I don't want to go back to my life in northwest of England, in my little town with a little working class life. It just didn't appeal to me at all. And I just sobbed my little heart out and didn't want to leave. And that's how much I was indoctrinated by the glitz and the glamour. And a love for America and what it stood for, which to my young mind was gadgets and gizmos and toys and exciting rides and films and characters and Hollywood actors and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, a long-running agenda to promote American culture. And of course, American culture itself, I hope no American viewers would feel that I'm disparaging American culture, because what I'm talking about here is the artificial culture, the one that's made by the culture creators, the stuff that's scripted, that is planned, that is choreographed and orchestrated in order to be exported for consumption over there in other countries and other places, right? I'm not talking about the real world American culture on the ground, the people who are sort of living in a way that is harmonious with the natural environments there. The American culture of telling the British royalty to F off with your taxation, and we're going to go over here and make lives for ourselves by being industrious and hardworking and entrepreneurial. I'm not talking about that American culture. I mean, the Hollywood stuff. That is all manufactured and created for exportation in order to degrade other parts of the world, in my opinion. Anyway, this was done in collaboration with the CIA-funded Congress of Cultural Freedom and the closely related Rockefeller and Ford foundations. The CIA itself, of course, was controlled by the same financial interests, most of its directors having been CFR members, beginning with Alan Dulles, who was himself a banker. It may be noted that Rockefeller and allied financial interests had been promoting African American culture for political purposes since the 1920s. In 2009, the Rockefeller Foundation granted $155,000 to Jazz at Lincoln Center for producing a DVD film illustrating the democratic principles of jazz music that are allegedly fundamental to the American way of life. From its base in New York City, JALC operates a nationwide network of programs indoctrinating millions of unsuspecting citizens into giving up their own heritage in favor of African American culture. As American culture was influenced by African elements, the promotion of jazz clubs and music styles rooted in the Negro spiritual tradition introduced strong African American influence into British and European culture. Indeed, it must be understood from the outset that this Afro-Americanization was a Europe-wide process promoted by the Carnegie, Rockefeller, Ford, and more recently Soros foundations. Therefore, similar developments were taking place in France and elsewhere. This, combined with large-scale immigration from the West Indies and other parts of the British Commonwealth and former European colonies to enable multiculturalism to take root in Britain and European society. This process was reinforced by African Caribbean traditions like reggae in the 60s and 70s, promoted by the same interests, and later became dominant, paving the way for large-scale penetration of European culture by non-European traditions. By the early 1960s, it was clear that large numbers of immigrants, particularly South Asians, Indians, and Pakistanis, were not prepared to assimilate. Instead of encouraging the immigrant population to assimilate, the left-wing political leadership under Labour PM Harold Wilson reacted by imposing multiculturalism disguised as integration on the indigenous society. In a speech to a meeting of voluntary liaison committees on the 23rd of May 1966, Labour Home Secretary and former Fabian Society Chairman Roy Jenkins defined integration as equal opportunity accompanied by cultural diversity, adding that this was now a Home Office responsibility. Excuse me. The policy of the Fabian Socialist Labour Party from the late 1960s has been to transform Britain into a multicultural society. This is supposed to make British society richer, better, more competitive, and more successful. However, there are a number of serious problems with this view. Number 1. State-imposed multiculturalism disregards the wishes and interests of the indigenous majority population and therefore violates the most fundamental principle of democracy. It also violates the wishes and interests of those immigrants who want to integrate into the majority culture. Yeah, really great point. And it's kind of the thesis, antithesis, synthesis is what happens. So you have the native population, you have the non-native population who all rock up, and then you have two separate cultures living side by side, hopefully peacefully, but not always. And at some point, this process leads to them sort of merging in some way. It leads to a third culture being born out of that mixing of the two cultures, the native and the non-native. And the third culture is the goal. That's the end goal of this process, to iron out those differences and make it so that so that there is a homogenization. There's a watering down of each culture, so both cultures suffer. Both the natives and the non-natives suffer, right? The immigrants themselves are also victims of a process that is attacking them, right? So it's not about like they're the bad guys and they're coming here and they're taking our jobs and we need to like fight them, even though that's probably the way they'll try and play it. The world controllers will try and play it. Really, it's a great divide and conquer tactic that the outcome of which, if there are race wars and religious conflicts and whatever, there'll be, on the other side of all that, there'll be a sort of settling down, and that is the end goal. That's where they want to get to. So you'll have gotten rid of the nationalism, you'll have gotten rid of the Christianity, maybe even getting rid of the extreme of the fundamental Islam, of the fundamental Christians, maybe getting rid of all of that, and on the other side of it, you have the UN's philosophy, perhaps replacing those two religions. Because just in the same way that nationalism has been blamed over and over again for causing world war, even though that's patently untrue, it's not caused by nationalism, but the outcome of the world wars 1 and 2 was we got to do away with nationalism. We need the United States of Europe. We need the EU. We need the League of Nations. We need the UN, because nationalism is causing all this war. In the same way, they could do the same thing with religion. They could say religion is causing all this conflict and this war. We need to get rid of it, and we need to merge it under a supra-religion, which could come from the UN as the Baha'i faith. I know that's touted as a sort of world religion, or it could be the perennial philosophy as described by Aldous Huxley in his book entitled The Perennial Philosophy, which is actually one that I think would be good to read on the channel. So let me know your thoughts if you think that would be good. Okay, point 1. Point 2. Society needs a dominant majority culture to keep it together. Scientific research has shown that multi-ethnic and multicultural societies are less able to cooperate, for example, on issues like the development of public infrastructure and national defense, than those belonging to the same ethnic and cultural group. Okay, so what stable and successful societies have in common is not cultural diversity, but cultural unity based on a set of shared cultural values. Yeah, so the point here is that some cultures really value honesty and integrity, and other cultures value that less. So some cultures are more comfortable with lying and not being open and honest about your intentions and your feelings and your what you want out of a transaction. and other cultures will be very straightforward and forthright and say, this is what I want. Can you do that? Yes, no, let's move on and let's deal with it in a direct manner. And chucking together people from one group with people from another group and then saying, right, you need to all cooperate to build this high rise or this train line or whatever it is. It's just a recipe for disaster, right? And they're not going to see eye to eye. They're not going to be able to read each other's cues. They're going to be used to managing professional relationships in a totally different way, depending on what culture and background they come from, which is going to lead to tension and misunderstandings and problems and inefficiencies. And that's kind of what you're seeing. I would say that as a nation, there's really nothing that we're very efficient at. All the major large-scale projects that are funded with public money tend to be late, tend to go over budget. They get cancelled, then they get revivified and brought back to life again when they've already been cancelled once. It's an absolute shit show. And I think this basically what I'm saying is I think he's on something at this point, and this might be part of the reason why, right? Number 3. The idea that cultural diversity makes a society, quote unquote, richer is bogus. Great word, bogus. If it were true that cultural diversity makes a society richer, it would mean that the more culturally diverse a society is, the better it will become. This is not supported by any known evidence. In reality, greater diversity means greater division, eventually leading to the disintegration of the society or culture in question. Clearly, this is the plan of the multiculturalist left, which has always aimed to break up and reconstruct society for its own agenda. Yes. What is that agenda? That's the question, isn't it? I would submit the agenda is probably something like world technocratic socialism, as described by the Fabians. 4. History shows that multicultural societies are neither better nor more successful than monocultural ones. The biblical Tower of Babel is no empty warning. In most cases, multiculturalism in the long term leads to conflict, disunity, and bloodshed, as it has done, for example, in the Roman Empire, Germany, Ireland, India, Israel, Yugoslavia, and many other places. Yeah, there's a lot of examples there. The Roman Empire is a case in point. Historian Bonnie Greer, a panel member on the BBC Question Time immigration debate, appeared to suggest the Roman Empire as a model of multicultural society. As a historian, Greer ought to have known some basic historical facts. For example, that the Romans came to Britain as invaders and occupiers, that their aim was to plunder the country's natural resources, that they were responsible for the murder of thousands of indigenous Britons, in addition to millions of continental Celts, that the Roman Empire was built on the oppression, enslavement, and exploitation of other nations, and that there were many struggles of liberation from Roman rule which were brutally suppressed. Finally, Roman multiculturalism only lasted until one alien culture, Christianity, was allowed to infiltrate and subvert the established order, after which it soon collapsed and disappeared. On balance, not an example for Britain, or any other nation interested in self-preservation, to emulate. Greer also appears to have forgotten the religious persecution practiced by Roman authorities. That reminds me, back when I was reading through, were reading through the Lusitania book by Colin Simpson, which was about a year ago. We had a guy in the chat there who I haven't seen for a while called Peter, and he used to say all the time, more Roman than Rome, when I was describing these kind of things, and that phrase just springs to mind, and I think is a good one, especially this idea of religious persecution, and given the topics and the stories that we covered on the Preamble Ramble tonight, that is there's an argument that is occurring, that's happening. So, point 5. Multiculturalism is motivated by a hidden agenda. The hidden agenda of the multiculturalist industry is immediately exposed by its demand to make British society more multicultural. The fact is that Britain has long been multicultural. British culture contains Celtic, Roman, and Anglo-Saxon elements. Christianity itself contains elements of Hellenistic and Middle Eastern origin. As adding salt to already salted food would destroy its taste and nutritional value, making Britain even more multicultural than it already is, means to make it more foreign and less British. That is, to destroy its cultural identity. This clearly exposes the anti-British agenda of the multiculturalist brigade. Yeah, and that's the argument that's often used, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, we're all immigrants. We're all immigrants and everything's already multicultural already, so let's just throw even more people together who don't speak each other's language and who don't understand each other's behaviors and values and belief systems, because, well, it's already multicultural, isn't it? I can't have too much of a good thing. Tellingly, Roy Jenkins served as Fabian Society chairman in the 1950s and in the 1970s joined David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission. The Wilson government itself was funded by the IMF, which was run by members of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. Thus, a clear connection can be established between multiculturalism and the international money power whose agenda is to establish world government by destroying the nation state. Exactly. That is it in a nutshell. 6. Multiculturalism is self-contradictory and counterproductive. The international financial interests agenda coincides with that of international socialism. In particular, multiculturalism is based on the left-wing assumption that Britain's indigenous culture is fundamentally defective and in need of being replaced with something else. To the extent that it rejects Britain's majority culture and promotes cultures that are opposed to diversity, such as Islam, multiculturalism contradicts itself. In practice, it can never lead to cultural equality, but to the annihilation of British culture and its replacement with that imported culture which is most efficient in imposing itself and suppressing other cultures. Currently, the strongest candidate for this as the fastest growing imported culture is Islam. Multiculturalism and Islamization. While multiculturalism in and of itself does not automatically lead to Islamization, there are some specific factors which indicate that it does so in Britain and other countries with a growing Muslim population. 1. The largest section of Britain's immigrant population has traditionally been of South Asian origin. The majority of that are Muslims. If to this we add Muslims from the Mediterranean Union, that is, North Africa and the Middle East, Turkey, Iraq, etc., we can see that Islam is a dominant element in the immigrant population. 2. The birth rate in the Muslim population is higher than that in the indigenous society. Yes, that is a key part. The indigenous society is bombarded with this idea that, well, it's bad for the environment to have children. Don't you want to, rather than have children and raise children, why don't you just be a child for your whole life? You know? And like, to put it into context, the story that I told at the start of the broadcast where the gentleman I met yesterday told me he had 14 nephews. I have 0. I have 1 step nephew, technically. You know, if you want to get to, he's my nephew, but you know, it's a step sister's son. 1. Oh, but if you're counting step, no, I have a few more. Yeah, no, I have 3. I have 3 if you count my stepbrothers and sisters and their children. Right. So just to put it in context, to show you the contrast there, backing up this, and I don't know if the gentleman I talked to yesterday was Muslim or not. We didn't get onto that while discussing his sales pitch. But anyway, point 3. The Muslim population is the least willing to assimilate into the existing indigenous society. Doesn't say why or give any explanation, but I certainly see more like what I would describe as traditional Muslim garments and styles of clothing and ways of dressing out there. You know, so that might suggest that this point is true. Unless it's just they're hanging on to their awesome fashion, which which King Charles told us we have the Islamic Spain to thank for, the fashion that they brought over here. Point 4, the Muslim population receives special support from British and foreign governments, local councils, race relations committees, race activists, etc. For example, Saudi Arabia poured £50 million into the construction of mosques and Islamic centres in Britain between 1980 and 1990 alone. So 10 years, £50 million in 10 years. Woo. Similarly, between 1995 and 2008, over £233.5 million was paid to British universities by Islamic regimes to change the intellectual climate in favour of Islam and against the West. That's from a Daily Telegraph article entitled Libya and the LSE. That's the London School of Economics, a Fabian Society creation. No comparable support for Christianity exists. That's the critical factor here, isn't it? This is how multiculturalism does not lead to equality. Nobody's pouring money into the country to encourage and support and look after and bolster the culture of the native population. Do you know what I mean? So, all the above factors inevitably lead to the growth of the Islamic element in the multicultural scheme, and this means gradual but sure Islamization of British society and culture. In the face of the fact, even the architect of multiculturalism, Roy Jenkins himself, was forced to admit the fallacy of pro-Muslim immigration policies, stating, quote, "We might have been more cautious about allowing the creation in the 1950s of substantial Muslim communities here." He said that in 1989 in Independent magazine. Unfortunately, Jenkins and his fellow Labourites failed to propose any solution to the problem they have created, and which has continued and been allowed to continue by every single successive government, because it's not about which political team is in. It's about this is the plan and it goes ahead regardless of whether it's the red team or the blue team currently sitting in the Iron Throne. That's a reference to Game of Thrones there. You know that throne that's made out of swords? I think they call it the Iron Throne. It's been a while since I watched it. But anyway, next section is there a left-wing conspiracy to destroy Europe's indigenous culture? As we have just seen, in Britain, Labour socialism has been the architect of both multiculturalism and the Islamization resulting from it. The question that naturally arises is, what are Labour's motives? It must be pointed out, and this is where I kind of, just to interject again, this is when I kind of disagree with Ratiu, because he seems to think that the Conservatives are not part of this plan and offer some sort of means by which it might be resisted or the progress might be halted or prevented or something. I think unlikely. I think the way the system is set up and has been designed since Dot is that none of the political parties are ever going to have any hope of standing against this agenda, because it's bigger and higher and above and beyond their spheres of influence, which, let's be honest, is nothing really. They're just the people who are paid to be the public faces of the ruling class, of the world controllers. They're the people that Alan Watt would describe as they're the ones we get to throw tomatoes at, and we get to hate and boo and hiss, like a pantomime show. And that's all their purpose is. They stand there and take the hate and get their money and their bonuses and their benefits and their deals and their speaking engagements and their the lifestyle that they get afforded by playing that role. And that's the important word, is it's a role that they play, and it's all scripted and planned, and the actual decisions to do this and carry this plan out are being made in places like Chatham House and the CFR and the Fabian Society and the think tanks and these influential organizations that are off screen, that are beyond the democratic vote, that are beyond scrutiny in many cases, and they are the ones that come up with the policy and the plans, and they write the books about it, such as First Global Revolution, the Club of Rome, classic example. They write the books, they write the plans in the books, and they publish them, and then they carry them out. You can't like blame them. It's not like they're there's a certain element of secrecy involved, but they're not totally secret. They publish their plans, and they make those plans available to people who are curious and are willing to read books. But at the same time, they also flood the whole landscape with trivia and nonsense and distractions and entertainment, and people get caught up in that. And they think they're living their lives when actually they're just watching other people do stuff. That's all entertainment is. You're sitting on a chair watching a glowing rectangle on which other people are doing stuff, when really you should switch off that glowing rectangle and go and do stuff yourself, right? So you can't blame them. They do make their plans known, and they do sort of tell you that they're going to slap you in the face, and then when they slap you in the face, it's kind of our fault for not getting out of the way. But don't get me wrong, it is totally evil and psychopathic. I'm not trying to stick up for them and excuse them. But they do everything legally, and they do it all through a mechanism of consent, because they've told us what the plan is and how they do it, and not enough of us have stood up to say, "Oi, stop doing that. I do not consent to it." No. And that's part of the work that we do, myself here on this channel, and other people who try and explain this to people. And unfortunately, it takes many hours of speaking into a microphone and reading books and pointing out documents and quotes and etc. to paint this picture, because it's very convoluted and complex tapestry to explain to people. But we do it because it's fun and it's important and it needs to be done. So. Let's see. What are Labour's motives? It must be pointed out that even among those who are or claim to be critical of multiculturalism and Islamization, there are some who apparently fail to see any deliberate intention. In Reflections on the Revolution in Europe, Christopher Caldwell states, quote, "Western Europe became a multi-ethnic society in a fit of absence of mind." Yeah, it just happened. Total accident. It was just a natural, organic, unplanned evolution. Just like everything in the world there's no plan, there's no design, there's no creator. It is just all organically evolving, without a plan, without a purpose, naturally, no hidden hand, no forces shaping the things that are happening. It's just organic evolution. That's all it is. Another quote from from Christopher Caldwell is, "Celebrating diversity is an unwitting way of implementing a policy of divide and rule." Sorry, that was from, that last quote was Patrick West in The Poverty of Multiculturalism, which is, sounds like a book I would like to read, The Poverty of Multiculturalism. So yeah, divide and rule. That's the key thing that explains what is happening. Who is doing the dividing and ruling, and they're the people to get mad at. They're the people to focus on, not the other group. The group of others who we are being divided from, if that makes sense. So we've got Doris in the chat as well, who says, "Anyone follow Sam Guerin's work?" I've never heard of Sam Guerin, but there could be somebody else in one of the chats who has and does. So continuing. "But a policy designed to divide and rule cannot be unwitting. Design implies intentional planning. The simultaneous promotion of both diversity and equality, or difference and sameness, could be mistaken for the schizoid thinking, or doublethink, to use Orwell's term, of liberal elites who have lost their way, were it not for the well-documented and very Machiavellian leftist tactic of promoting irrationalism or intellectual confusion as a smokescreen for Marxist agendas. The left-wing journalist and Fabian Politoynbee was perhaps unwittingly closer to the truth when she wrote that Islam's anti-Americanism was the reason why it was embraced by the left. I may be in bad company, but this law will not work. was the name of an article she wrote in The Guardian. And I think I'm right in saying Polly Toynbee is a sort of descendant of Arnold Toynbee, the Milnerite historian, I think. We are grateful to Toynbee for this valuable insight into leftist thinking. But could it be that her frank admission unwittingly covers up something else? For example, the fact that Islam is not only anti-American, but also anti-British, anti-European, anti-Western, and anti-Christian, as became evident after the 7/7 London bombing and other atrocities, if not before. And, therefore, if the left embraces Islam for its anti-Americanism, it also embraces Islam for its anti-Britishism, anti-Europeanism, anti-Westernism, and anti-Christianism. That does, all that seems to be the case. Describe what is happening. Whatever is happening, it seems to be against British, Western Christian values and culture. Indeed, the left believes that culture must be, quote, modified to accommodate itself to progressive conditions. This belief found official expression in publications like the 1985 Swan Report, Education for All, which recommended that British society be changed to accommodate ethnic groups. The left also believes in the destruction of traditional British culture as a precondition for the establishment of socialism. British resistance to alien ways of life and attachment to Christian values are deemed undesirable by the left. This, again, found its way into government papers like the Swan Report, which recommended an end to morning assembly with prayers, the teaching of ethnic languages like Punjabi even in all-white schools, and that multiculturalism permeate all aspects of a school's work. Such official multiculturalist recommendations were eagerly picked up by the Labour-controlled local councils and local education authorities, particularly in inner London. Following the logic of its social conflict or class struggle strategy on which it depends for its survival, the left has long abandoned the indigenous working class in favour of the immigrant class, and the latter in favour of the Muslim class, the largest, best organised, most militant, and therefore most useful immigrant group for socialist revolutionary purposes. In this process, Labour has abandoned the culture of the indigenous population in favour of multiculturalism and Islam. There can be no doubt that the left, or those factions of it which have not yet fully embraced Islam, hopes to reform Islam in the same way it has reformed Western religion and culture. Whether it has any chance of success is another matter. To return to Caldwell's claim that Western Europe became a multi-ethnic society in a fit of absence of mind, the fact is that Western Europe became multi-ethnic because it was convenient to unprincipled and corrupt local business, international finance, and their political collaborators for it to become multi-ethnic. Being a columnist for the Financial Times and New York Times, Caldwell understandably lets the money power off the hook. Yeah, surprise, surprise. Oh, nothing to do with the Rothschilds and the central banks and the people who print the money and loan it out at interests and enslave everybody with debt. No. Nothing to do with them. Nothing to see here. In sum, multiculturalism is nothing but a device by which the anti-European, anti-Western, and anti-Christian left, in collaboration with its international paymasters, seeks to destroy indigenous culture and replace it with an alien one for its own agenda. In this process, cultural equality inevitably morphs into cultural subordination and finally cultural annihilation of the indigenous majority community. I told you that was a short chapter. But we've got references and notes to go through, so I'll get those on the screen. Just want to mention Heidi's comment over on Rumble, which I think is very nice. There are wonderful people around me, she says, around all of us. Kindness is everywhere. Don't fear, don't despair. I agree. I really like those words. I'm not here to try and drum up fear. I don't want to get people suspicious of their neighbor or angry. Reading this, I think, is just a fairly unemotive description of just this is what is happening. and this is why it's happening and the history behind it. And if you're not happy with it, we gotta be able to discuss it and talk about it, okay? And it helps if you've got a narrative that makes sense, that is backed up by evidence, that describes reality. And I think this book does a really good job of providing that. We also have Faith as well, who says it's quite funny that the Afro-American genre is so un-African. Faith says, I'm African and we don't recognize any of the, quote, African music being promoted. That's a really good point. I wish more people knew that. And it is kind of a silly designation, this African-American designation, isn't it? I remember, I forget, was there a comedian or something that he said, a black comedian in America said if I went to Africa, they wouldn't call him an American African. You know, like it's a very strange thing. But the whole question of race and ethnicity and how you designate it and who is and who isn't is quite tricky, you know. But don't worry, we are one human family and we will all be united under the umbrella of the United Nations. We got Sede Sapiente as well over on YouTube. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining. Hope you're doing well. I feel like I just lost some volume on the mic. Is my level still good? Let me know if it is. We're going to go through quickly the references and notes for this chapter. So we've got this Christopher Caldwell book, Reflections on the Revolution in Europe. I think it's a book. London, 2009. The Labour Party and Foreign Policy. We've seen that one referenced before. 20th Century British Social Trends. We've got Immigration and the Nation State, Christian Jopke. That's 1999. I bet that's a good one. I've seen that one a few times. This name's popped up. He's referenced him quite a bit. Of course, Fabian Freeway. This one, Sheila Patterson, I think would be good too. Immigration and Race Relations in Britain from 1969. So a nice older book to get the history, where it started, how it started, and that would be a good one to get hold of. And likely cheap, I guess, but I don't know. Haven't looked it up. And then a lot of French stuff. I can't read French, so I won't dwell on that. And then this one here, Patrick West. The Poverty of Multiculturalism. That's 2005, but I have a feeling that that's probably quite a good one. My guess, maybe expensive and hard to find. I don't know. Sometimes the books, like this one, is very expensive and hard to find. So the books that deal with these topics in an honest way can be memory hold or priced out of most people's budget, because they don't want people reading it, do they? But that is the end of chapter 9. We're on page 420, so if you celebrate 420, then you can do so right now. You have permission. All right, I'm going to have a sip, and then we'll crack on with the next chapter, which is Islamization. How you all doing? I hope everyone is well and enjoyed that chapter. allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to follow me, keep up with my work and my broadcasting, and send me an email and stay in touch and all that good stuff. You can find all the ways to do that at that particular URL. Say it is. 420, bro. Yeah, man. I haven't celebrated 420 for a long time. But I used to celebrate it every day, but not anymore. Okay, we're doing pretty well for time, actually. We've got 2 hours, 12 minutes on the clock. So I think we can dive into the next chapter. I'm just going to get comfortable. Okay. So I think this is the last chapter of the book. And yeah, well, I mean, who knows what he's going to say about Islamization. I don't really know a lot about Islam, I'll be honest. It's not, I haven't read the book. I have a copy of the Quran. I know that you don't pronounce it Quran. There's like a pause. There's like a glottal pause in the middle, like Quran or something like that. So I don't even know how to pronounce the name of their holy book. But I do have a copy of it. It was gifted to me by a good friend, a colleague who I used to work with. And so I don't have much to say, really. I don't have friends who are Muslim. Not that I refuse to be friends with Muslims. It just hasn't panned out that I've, I don't have a lot of friends. Full stop. Most of my friends are here right now. Checking out the Haze Reviews broadcasts. When I got married, I realized that this is the only, married my best friend, and that's the only friend I really needed. So I don't have a lot of friends, so I don't have a first-hand insight into the world of Islam and the modern Muslims who live in and around me here in England. So I'm interested to read the book and hear anybody else's direct experiences about this. It's all valuable. It's all data. And I think it's all valid, and the more we can express it and explain it and describe it, the better chance we all have at understanding it. So let's get on with this chapter. We got Doris K says, George Carlin had an interesting thing to say about Muslimization, which YouTube doesn't want aired. I didn't know he had a quote about that. Well, if you can find out the name. Was it in one of his specials or was it an interview? Because I actually have all of his specials. I downloaded a George Carlin. It was on a torrent, but it was all his work. So I have all of his specials going right back to his early stuff, which was really clean. In the early days when he first started, he was a very clean comedian. And then he ended up being that ranting old man in his 80s. I think he did his last hour-long stand-up, and it was called It's Bad For You, and it's brilliant. It's really, really good. But all this stuff's good. But I'm going to see if I can dig up that clip. We could try BitChute, or BitChute's probably a good place to find it. Less censorship there, I think. Or Odyssey, maybe. It might be on Odyssey. Doris says it's in an interview. And also, Sam Gerrans has a translation of the Quran. So, that's anybody want to read that? You could look up Sam Gerrans' translation. Cool. All right. Let's get into chapter 10, the final chapter of the book. I always get a little bit not sad. I like the sensation of getting to the end of a book. It's an accomplishment. We done 420 pages. Look at that, how far we've come and how much ground we have covered in these pages. It's pretty astonishing. All killer, no filler. But when we get to the last chapter, I always feel a little bit of a bittersweet kind of sensation that me and my friends, we sometimes call it's a had sappy, which is kind of a mashup of sad and happy at the same time, right? Had sappy kind of feeling, because we're getting to the end. But, of course, that means we get to start a new book. So keep an eye out on the Telegram, Haze Reviews Telegram group. That's where I post the survey. I'll pick some books. I've been discussing, in the private chat group, what would be a good book to do next. Some of the themes that have come out. Do people want to explore more Milner group and Fabian society? Or is it a good time to change things up a little bit? Because we've done a lot of Fabians now. We've done this and Fabian Freeway, so we're pretty well versed on the Fabians. We've got a few ideas. We've narrowed it down to a few candidates. But if you're not in there, then you can't take part in steering the ship, the good ship Haze Reviews. But you will still get an opportunity to vote on the books that I've shortlisted, or that we have shortlisted, I should say. And that survey will go out to the main Telegram Haze Reviews page, where you can, vote for the book that you want to see read next on the channel. And what we'll probably end up doing is we'll do all 3 books on the survey, and we'll just do them in order of popularity, which is what we did last time, right? We did the last 3 books, which was, I think, Next Million Years, G. Edward Griffin's Fearful Master, and then this one. That came in first, second, and third place, and so we did them in that order. That's how we ended up here. So shoot on over to the Telegram, and that's where you can vote on what we're going to do next. And if you join the device community, you get the link to the private Telegram chat group, and then you can have even more of an input by talking to me and messaging me directly. But you can do that via email if you want to send an email. There's plenty of ways to get in touch. I'm not a secretive, elusive kind of figure, really. All right, then. Stop wittering, Nick. Read the damn chapter. Got it. Islamization. So, Islamization. Oh, hang on, let me move my mic. Islamization, or Islamification, is the transformation of non-Islamic into Islamic or Islam-dominated society. Okay. I quite prefer the word Islamification, but it's the same thing, so it doesn't matter. Why is Islamization a problem? There are many reasons why Islamization is a problem. The following is a selection. So it's not even an exhaustive list. And he's got 6 things on this list. So, number 1. Islam is a religion that is alien to Europe and has a long history of hostility to the West. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze. Two sneezes. I think that might be it. Just 2. Okay, so here's that statement he just made about Islam being alien to Europe and a long history of hostility toward the West. He is referencing that, Huntington and Lewis. Should we go check those references out very quick? Okay, I've gone too far. That's the index. So, Huntington is on this page. So Samuel Huntington's book, The Class of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order, 1996. I happen to know that book is super cheap. You can get it for less than £5 on Amazon, paperback. Samuel Huntington is an establishment guy through and through. I forget which particular institute or university he is working out of, but that is a mainstream history book right there that he's referencing. And Lewis is going to be on this page here, I think. We got C, E, F, G, H. Oh, no. It's after H, isn't it? L. There we go. Bernard Lewis has a book, Islam in the West, 1993, New York. So he's referencing 2 books for that statement. It's not just his opinion. So yeah, if you disagree with that point, then you got to take it up with Huntington and Lewis, get their books and read them and refute them, right? Because it's not Ratiu's opinion here. He's citing academic sources. Number 2, Islam is incompatible with the principles and ideals of Western democracy. Traditional Islamic society is a form of religious dictatorship, or, as described by Islamic scholars like Ayatollah Khomeini, the rule of divine law as interpreted by Islamic scholars over men. In consequence, according to Khomeini, Islamic government is based on Islamic Sharia law as found in the Quran and related writings known as Sunnah, while the only accepted legislative power is the God of Islam. Khomeini also declared that to juxtapose democratic and Islamic is an insult to Islam, and Islam is superior to all forms of democracy. All right, so remember we heard in the Preamble Ramble that England has a bunch of Sharia law courts now. Was it 80 courts, maybe? I think he said 80 or 50, maybe. I can't remember the number. If you can remember the number, let me know. I don't want to get it wrong and be accused of exaggeration. But I think it was 80. So Islam is superior to all forms of democracy. So maybe it's a good thing, because the democracy we've got is not really, well, one, it's not really a democracy, because what even is a democracy? And it's kind of crap. So, you know, maybe this could be a good outcome for everybody. Number 3, Islam is incompatible with Western culture. Oh, okay. Alcoholic drinks like wine, music, certain types of clothing, skirts, food such as pork, all these are fundamental to Western culture and they are unlawful in Islamic Sharia law. Oh, okay. So you got to... All right, so we get So we're going to get some sort of society that is organized in a way that's better than our democracy, but we're going to have to give up skirts, wine, and bacon sandwiches. Tough, really tough one. The use of music or alcoholic drink for social or religious purposes is fundamental to human civilization in general. I agree on the music. I don't know if I agree on the alcoholic drink. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with alcoholic drink, but I don't know if it's fundamental to human civilization. Religious purposes, sure. They like a bit of wine over in the church. Anyway, it follows that while a small, integrated Muslim minority would not be a problem, the spread of Islam beyond that would result in the erosion, suppression, and disappearance of indigenous Western culture. 4. Islam is incompatible with Western religion, whose scriptures and beliefs it rejects. For example, the Quran rejects beliefs that are central to Christianity, such as the divinity, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And there's some Quran quotes here. Al-Maida 575 and Al-Nisa 4157-158. Similarly, it is evident from the writings of church fathers and later church leaders from St. John of Damascus to Al-Kindi to Martin Luther that traditional Christianity does not recognize Muhammad, the founder of Islam, as a true prophet, nor Islam, referred to as the heresy of the Ishmaelites, as a true religion. The Bible itself warns of the danger of false prophets. It follows that the spread of Islam represents the spread of teachings and practices that are contrary to Western religious tradition and is detrimental to the latter. Number 5, Islamization is being promoted by self-serving groups with an anti-Western agenda, such as Muslim fundamentalists, left-wing extremists, and international financial interests. 6. Islamization is being enforced against the will and interests of the indigenous Western population, who does not wish to live in a society dominated or ruled by Islam. So, there you are. And that's just 6 reasons. And that's like against the will and interests of the indigenous. That's a really key part. We're told we live in a democracy, and yet this is being done without our consent or approval, or without being asked if we want it. So, next section is the Islamization of Britain. The rise of Protestantism in the 1600s, followed by the Enlightenment in the 18th and liberalism in the 19th centuries, began to erode traditional Western culture. In particular, liberalism undermined the authority of church and king on which the established social order was based. Liberalism's offshoot, socialism, continued this process, leading to a breakdown of traditional culture. In the midst of this cultural decline, alternative, fabricated, anti-Christian religions like Freemasonry and Theosophy began to proliferate. It was at that point that Muslim missionaries and agitators with establishment encouragement began to infiltrate British society. Many of these missionaries were connected with the Islamic revivalist Agora movement, led by Syed Ahmed Khan, the founder of the Muhammadan Anglo-Oriental College at Agora. In 1896, Khan's friend and collaborator Sir Thomas Walker Arnold wrote The Preaching of Islam, and between 1921 and 1930 taught Arabic and Islamic studies at the London School of Oriental Studies, later named School of Oriental and African Studies. In the 1930s, Khan's and Arnold's disciple Muhammad Iqbal, who became the leader of the All India Muslim League, pioneered the idea of a separate Muslim state in India and collaborated with Fabian Society member Muhammad Ali Jinnah in the creation of Pakistan. Well, that sounds like some fascinating history right there, the creation of Pakistan. Another Islamic revivalist movement that sprung up at the time was the Lahore-based Ahmadiyya. In 1912, Arnold appointed the Ahmadi Khwaja Kamal Uddin as Imam of the Woking Mosque in Woking, Surrey. Kamal Uddin established the Woking Muslim Mission, which was instrumental in converting a number of Britons to Islam, including Lord Headley, who wrote A Western Awakening to Islam in 1914 and became a Muslim missionary himself. That's interesting to get hold of that book, wouldn't it? Let me write down Lord Headley. L-Y, and I'll just put 1914 to remind me to look up his book. However, except among sections of the degenerate intellectual classes, traditional Islam failed to evoke wide interest in Britain. Therefore, Muslim missionaries and their British collaborators resorted to promoting softer brands of Islam, such as Sufism. Sufism, and particularly the writings of Iranian poet Omar Khayyam, said to have been a Sufi, had long been a favourite with Britain's left-wing elites. Now, let me pause there for a moment to bring this kind of full circle, sort of a little bit. Those of you who have been on the channel for a while and went through the Fabian Freeway book will have seen the part of that where I talk about the stained glass window, which I think is recreated in here, isn't it, somewhere? I'm positive it is. Yeah, there's a picture of it in here. There's a stained glass window, and it has a picture of all the Fabian socialists on it. And they're hammering the world. They've got it heated up over an anvil. It's red hot. And they're whacking it with a hammer. And there's a little saying there which says, mold it nearer to the heart's desire. That line across the top, mold it nearer to the heart's desire. That line across the top there is from a poem by this poet that Ratiu just mentioned. There he is, Iranian poet Omar Khayyam. But that is not the only place where that quote appears. Do you want to know where else it appears? It also appears in this book, The First Global Revolution by the Council of the Club of Rome. And if we open this book and we go past the first page and we go past this page here, then we find a box. Oh, look at that. Interesting. I love. Could thou and I with fate conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire, would not we shatter it to bits and then remold it nearer to the heart's desire? Omar Khayyam. There you go. Probably just a coincidence, probably nothing to see here, you know. What is interesting, though, is this is a fuller quote than what you get on the Fabian window. The Fabian window is just that line, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. So if you remold something, you know, that sounds, it's not too bad. Get a bit of plasticine, you know, it's a dog, and you kind of remold it a little bit and turn it into a cat or something similar. But the full quote is, shatter it to bits and then remold it nearer to the heart's desire. So they left that bit off the window, in other words. But they didn't leave that out of the First Global Revolution. And shout out to my good friend Bai for donating that to the channel. That is one of my most precious books that I have in the library. Probably a good candidate to read on the stream one day as well. But I thought it was worth pointing out the link between those two books. And if you're wondering why the Club of Rome Global Revolution book is important, then there's a very famous quote in there that is very critical in understanding the climate movement, the environmental climate change movement. But they use the same poem, and that suggests that these are the same people running the same scams. Anyway, back to the book. Nor was interest in Sufism, whether genuine or affected, always innocent. Khayyam's verse, shatter it to bits and then remold it nearer to the heart's desire, used by Bernard Shaw in the Fabian Society's logo, was a hidden reference to the reconstruction of the world order in line with international oil and related interests. The Anglo-Persian Oil Company, which became BP, didn't it? So Anglo-Persian Oil Company is nowadays, it still exists, and it's BP, had been recently formed, and together with the Imperial Bank of Persia marked the region as Milner Group territory. Curious publications like A Pilgrimage to the Tomb of Omar Khayyam by dubious characters like Percy Molesworth Sykes began to appear on both sides of the Atlantic, revealing the interests of the Anglo-American establishment. Muhammad Iqbal himself had been preaching a mixture of Sufism and Islamic revivalism. Sufism, along with Iqbal's writings, was promoted by British Orientalists like Thomas Arnold of SOAS, Arthur John Arbery of SOAS, later Cambridge University, and Reynold A. Nicholson of Cambridge. In 1916, the London Sufi Order of the West was founded by the Indian Hazrat Inayat Khan, who taught that Prophet Muhammad had brought a divine message of democracy. So, Islam is both superior than democracy and is also compatible with democracy at the same time. Isn't that magical? In the 1960s, Sufism and Islam were promoted by the Indian-born imposter Idris Shah and his left-wing British collaborators like Robert Graves and Doris Lessing, in addition to left-dominated institutions like those mentioned above. What becomes evident is that we are dealing with the systematic promotion of Islam by individuals and groups connected with shadowy organizations like the Fabian Society, representing political and economic interests that were unknown to the general public. These groups were involved in shaping developments in South Asia, Iran, and the Near East. For example, in 1921, High Commissioner Herbert, later Lord Samuel, a close friend of the Fabian leadership and leading member of their Rainbow Circle, appointed Muhammad Amin al-Husseini Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. Al-Husseini later played an important role in the Muslim Brotherhood, the Caliphate, Islamic State movement, and the Arab League. Meanwhile, Fabian Society member Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in collaboration with Fabian International Bureau Chairman and Commonwealth Secretary Philip Noel Baker and Labour's Fabian Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin, promoted the creation of Pakistan as well as the annexation of Kashmir to Pakistan. In August 1947, Pakistan was created with Jinnah as Governor-General. In October, it invaded and occupied Kashmir. Soon after these events, substantial Muslim communities, particularly from Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, all areas promoted by the Fabian Labour Combine, began to establish themselves in Britain. In the 1960s, the same Fabian Socialist Labour Party under Home Secretary and Fabian Society Chairman Roy Jenkins began to introduce policies replacing assimilation and integration of immigrants with state-enforced cultural diversity or multiculturalism, which also implied multi-religionism. The main beneficiary of this was the rapidly growing Muslim community. Muslim immigrants had already shown little interest in adopting British language, culture, and religion. Labour's new multiculturalist policies only enabled them to become more assertive. In addition, the rise of oil prices in the 1970s created wealthy Islamic regimes like Saudi Arabia, which began to pump millions of pounds into the building of mosques and Islamic centres in the UK in the 80s and 90s. Government support, financial backing by oil-rich Islamic regimes, inspiration from Iran's Islamic Revolution of 1979, as well as guidance and support from Muslim fundamentalist groups like the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, led to the rise of militant Islam. Muslim activists began to make demands such as the extension of the blasphemy law to include Islam, laws against religious discrimination, and state funding of Muslim schools. The publication in 1988 of Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses was used by Labour leaders like Roy Hattersley and Jack Straw to side with the Muslims, while Muslim extremists were firebombing bookshops Hattersley infamously claimed that expecting Muslims to behave like non-Muslims was racist. Even the Church of England, which had been long infiltrated and subverted by the Fabian left, sided with Islam. Its leaders, the left-wing Archbishop of Canterbury, Robert Runcie, demanded a change in the blasphemy law to include Islam. State-sponsored Islamization began in earnest with the coming to power of Tony Blair's New Labour in 1997, which began to promote a new understanding of Islam. In 2000, Blair declared that there is a lot of misunderstanding about Islam. It is a deeply reflective, peaceful, and very beautiful religious faith, and I think it would be hugely helpful if people from other religious faiths knew more about it. Following the Al-Qaeda attacks on New York and Washington in September 2001, large amounts of taxpayers' money were ostensibly spent on fighting Islamic extremism. In reality, most of it, about £90 million, went to groups linked to extremist organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and its counterpart Jamaat-e-Islami in Pakistan. Other beneficiaries included the Muslim Council of Britain, the United Kingdom Islamic Mission, and the Islamic Society of Britain, in an attempt to win Muslim votes. In Luton alone, the Home Office project Preventing Violent Extremism funded 7 Muslim centres, and that's from a Daily Telegraph story entitled "How the Government Pays Muslims to Vote Labour." In particular, more than £10 million were allocated to the Islamic Forum of Europe, which aims to turn Britain and Europe into an Islamic state. Moreover, the IFE was allowed to infiltrate the Labour Party itself, becoming a secret party within Labour and influencing votes in favour of Islam. That's another Daily Telegraph story. Other organisations with which Islamic fundamentalists were allowed to infiltrate at will during the Labour regime were MI5, MI6, Scotland Yard, and the Territorial Army. The same Labour regime also appointed Muslims as ministers, beginning with Shahid Malik in 2007. Meanwhile, while Britain's political elites were promoting Islam, the Church of England, with a few notable exceptions like that of the Bishop of Rochester, Michael Nazir Ali, ironically a Pakistani, virtually surrendered to Islam. In October 2003, the new left-wing Anglican leader, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, appointed by Fabian Prime Minister Blair, speaking at Chatham House, went so far as to declare that Islamic terrorists had serious moral goals. Clearly, when even the Church takes a pro-Islamic stand, the Islamization process has advanced to a point where it has become almost unstoppable. If it is to be stopped, this will have to be done by the British people themselves, not by the treasonous political and religious elites. The promotion of Islamization in Britain has not been restricted to political and religious figures. The latter have enjoyed the support of other members of the establishment, notably the Prince of Wales. Prince Charles's well-known infatuation with Islam has given rise to fears that he may be a secret Muslim convert. Indeed, closer analysis shows that such fears are not unfounded. His interest in Islam, which became public in the 1980s, goes far beyond the usual official pandering to Muslim interests. I'm glad I showed that video at the start of the Preamble Ramble as well. So if you join late, go and check out the early clip of a young king formerly known as Prince Charles, talking about how great Islam, Spanish Islam is. What did he call it? Spanish Islam? I think that's what he called it. Islamic Spain? One of those two. In 1993, Prince Charles gave a speech at the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, of which he is a patron, in which he infamously dismissed the view that Islamic Sharia law, which prescribes public beheading, stoning to death, and limb amputation for various offences, is cruel, barbaric, and unjust, as unthinking prejudice. So, our king thinks that people who don't like public beheading, death by stoning, and the amputation of limbs are unthinking and prejudiced people. In the same speech, he claimed that medieval Islam was a religion of remarkable tolerance. Not only is it absurd to interpret the invasion of non-Muslim countries and their subjection to Islamic religion and culture as an act of tolerance, but this interpretation is contradicted by the historical evidence showing that Islam brought death, slavery, and destruction to the nations it invaded and conquered. Moreover, such claims are an insult to the memory of those who died defending their country, their people, and their faith against Muslim aggression, as well as of those who suffered and continue to suffer under Muslim occupation. Speaking at OCIS again in June 2010, Prince Charles urged Western environmentalists to follow the Islamic approach to nature, describing the Islamic world as the custodian of mankind's wisdom and spiritual knowledge. Similarly, speaking at the opening of a new building at the Markfield Institute of Higher Education, he played the old revisionist record on Islam's supposed contribution to the European Renaissance, after which he emphasized the need for a study of Islam. I think those clips we showed at the beginning are probably from that speech. As holder of a university degree in history, the prince ought to know better. By definition, the Renaissance was a movement inspired by classical European culture. Authentic European spirituality is firmly rooted in classical and Christian tradition and has nothing to do with Islam. If any religion apart from Christianity qualifies for special royal patronage for its contribution to the Renaissance, it is classical paganism, not Islam. Unfortunately, logic has never been something apologists for Islam would knowingly endorse. After all, logic was one of the first foreign sciences which medieval Islam, for reasons of self-preservation, chose to reject and suppress. This explains the logical and moral contortions of those who see Muslim aggression against other faiths as an expression of tolerance. Moreover, Prince Charles had the misfortune of being an alumnus of Milner-Fabian controlled Cambridge University at a time when fraudsters like Idris Shah were on the prowl, peddling Arabian tales about the alleged wonders of Islam. See Chapter 2, The Fabian Conspiracy. But even if the prince isn't aware of the true roots of the Renaissance, he ought to know what he has chosen to promote. MIHE was established in 2000 by the Islamic Foundation to bring together the excellence of the British higher education and the richness of traditional Islamic education. Its rector is Islamic Foundation founder and chairman Khurshid Ahmad, who is also a member of the Pakistan Senate and vice president of the Islamist Jamaat-e-Islami. Charles himself, in his Markfield speech, acknowledges that for many years the Foundation's aim has been to propagate the tenets of Islam and expresses his delight at opening the new building of the Islamic Foundation, which embodies the vision of its founder and chairman, Khurshid Ahmad. This is no longer about tolerance and mutual respect. The prince consciously endorses the Foundation's proselytizing mission. However, the strongest supporting evidence for Prince Charles's conversion to Islam comes from what is known about his private life. Apart from making frequent public statements in support of Islam and endorsing Islamic missionary initiatives, he has reportedly taken to wearing a jalaba, which is a long hooded gown worn by Arabs, while relaxing and studying the Quran at his Highgrove residence. That's a News of the World story from 1997. In 2001, he had an Islamic garden installed at Highgrove called the Carpet Garden, after the Turkish carpet designs on which it is based, when he could have chosen classical European or Renaissance models, and has instigated similar projects across the country, such as at a primary school in Cardiff and at OCIS. That's a BBC News story reporting that. It may be noted that he also proudly displays his Islamic prayer beads while on visit to mosques such as Al-Azhar. And that's also from the BBC News. Prince Charles's behavior is psychologically revealing. If wearing Islamic or Sufi outfits and symbols in public may be explained away as a diplomatic gesture, wearing them in private betrays a psychological commitment to the tradition they represent. Quite clearly, such behavior is inspired by an intimate, intellectual, and emotional proximity to Islam, indicating a commitment to that religion which amounts to conversion. Being a Christian and a Muslim at the same time is consistent with both the perennialist teachings of Charles's left-wing New Age guru and government advisor Lawrence van der Post, a member of the Bloomsbury Group, who had his writings published by leading Fabian Leonard Woolf, and that old Islamic Trojan, Sufism, for which the prince appears to harbour an incurable mania. It's also a classic example of the double-thinking, multiple-identity personality which Milner-Fabian society mass-produces for its own purposes. In the light of this, we can see why, in a speech on building bridges between Islam and the West delivered at Wilton Park in December 1996, Prince Charles called for more Muslim teachers in British schools, claiming that while everywhere in the world people want to learn English, in the West we need to be taught by Islamic teachers how to learn with our hearts. Learning with our hearts from Muslims and similar statements are of course staple soundbites taken straight from the propaganda writings of the Idris Shah Sufi industry, which were massively promoted in the 70s by left-wing outfits like the BBC and UNESCO, the successor to the Milner-Fabian League of Nations International Commission on Intellectual Cooperation. Incidentally, both Charles's mentor Van der Post and Shah have been long exposed as fraudsters in J.D.F. Jones' Storyteller, The Many Lives of Lawrence van der Post, and James Moore, Neo-Sufism, The Case of Idris Shah. So there's a couple of books, articles, worth grabbing hold of, I would say. Thus, those who insist on learning with the heart as opposed to learning with the head may be practicing self-deception. For example, they may overlook the fact that Islamic gardens are of Persian origin and ought to be called by their true name, and that promoting them as Islamic and as the chief representatives of Islam can only serve to obscure the more sinister aspects of that religion. The same applies to Prince Charles's and other members of the establishment construction of medieval Islam as a force for cultural, scientific, and technological progress. The fact is that medieval Islam's architects, scientists, and scholars were often Greeks, Armenians, Persians, Indians, or Jews who, despite their Arabic names, were not necessarily followers of Islam. While Arabia, the birthplace of Islam, produced few learning or cultural centers of note, such places were mainly found, as one might expect, in the advanced countries conquered by Islam. After all, water is clearest and light shines brightest near the source, and so does knowledge. Needless to say, the lavish promotion of Islam indulged in by Britain's establishment requires vast amounts of cash, where even Prince Charles does not have. Hang on a sec. Excuse me. So, Islam needs cash. So where is the money coming from? As the prince reveals in the same speech, he had found that the subject of understanding between the Islamic and Western worlds captured, quote, a remarkable degree of attention from international financiers. The attention of which international financiers his ideas had captured becomes clear from a speech on the same lines at an InvestCorp dinner in July 1996. InvestCorp is an Arab League bank created in 1982 by the Arab League through its sub-organization, the Arab Monetary Fund. Oh, I didn't know there was an AMF. Nice. They got an IMF and they got an AMF. The Arab Monetary Fund and Rockefeller's Chase Manhattan Bank were created InvestCorp. The AMF was headed by Jawad M. Hashim, a graduate of the Rockefeller-funded Fabian LSE and member of the Group of 30, G30, a Rockefeller Foundation outfit. From 1992 to 2015, InvestCorp itself was run by the London-based Iraqi Nimir Kirdar, a former Chase vice president who was in charge of the Chase banking network in the Persian Gulf and was instrumental in promoting its business throughout the Gulf. Prince Charles has also been linked with Prince Al-Walid bin Talal of Saudi Arabia, whose Al-Walid Foundation, another foundation, works closely with Charles's own pro-Islamic Prince Charles charities. The Al-Walid Foundation funds the Al-Walid Center of Islamic Studies at Cambridge, which in turn interlocked with an international network of like-minded outfits, and according to its own website, has developed a global reach. In addition to being a notorious Islamist, bin Talal is a shareholder in the Rockefeller-controlled Citigroup Incorporated. Similarly, in 1997, King Fahd of Saudi Arabia donated $33 million. I wonder why 33? Why not 34? Why not 36 or 35? Why 33? Towards a new building for OCIS in order to establish Islamic studies at the heart of the British education system. So it's a Financial Times article, $33 million gift to Oxford Islamic Centre. Given the identity and background of the said international financiers, it cannot be altogether remarkable that they were captivated by the prince's pro-Islamic speeches. The prince must be either remarkably naive or remarkably disingenuous. The final and incontrovertible proof of Prince Charles's commitment to Islamization is the honorary doctorate from the Cairo Al-Azhar Mosque and Islamic University, awarded to him in March 2006, which he accepted as the greatest honor, giving Islamic Spain as a model for the world. That's the speech we watched at the start of the... I didn't even know this chapter was going to mention Prince Charles. I just thought it was relevant to the topic of multiculturalism. So a nice bit of synchronicity there. It's nice when the universe winks at you in that way, isn't it? Islamic Spain. Yeah, so that was a 2006 speech. While officially, the award was meant to be in recognition of Charles's promotion of interfaith tolerance, Al-Azhar director Abdel Sabur Shahin revealed the true intention behind the award as being to encourage him to support, i.e. advance, Islam against the obstacles it faces in Europe. That's a quote from a Daily Telegraph article. Indeed, Prince Charles does not merely promote interfaith tolerance, he promotes Islam as a system superior to others. In particular, it must be indisputable that his promotion of Muslim-occupied Spain as a model for the world amounts to nothing less than Islamism. The prince's connections with Al-Azhar are particularly disturbing in light of the fact that in 1991, Al-Azhar certified a manual of Islamic law outlawing all musical instruments and declaring that a caliph, a Muslim ruler, makes war on all non-Muslims until they either become Muslims or pay a non-Muslim poll tax. More taxation. Equally ominous is that British citizens interviewed on the subject by this writer appear to be either ignorant or in denial about Prince Charles's pro-Islamist activities. Among reasons for this is that Charles's promotion of Islam is barely mentioned by the media, while his pro-Islamist speeches are zealously guarded by the apparatchiks of Clarence House. The combined effect of this is that the general public is kept in the dark about the anti-British activities of some members of the royal family. Prince Charles's subversive influence is further evidenced by the Prince's Trust, which is notorious for its fundraising events featuring rock bands, rap singers, and fashion designers, as well as being sponsored by anti-culture idols and representatives of the money power. This picture is Francis Guy, HMA Beirut, meeting Sheikh Mohammed Hussein Fadlallah. I really enjoy saying that name, Fadlallah. All right, another section of the establishment involved in the Islamization program has been the Foreign Office. As pointed out by former Conservative Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer Michael Portillo, the British Foreign Office has a deserved reputation for being Arabist and partisan. Exactly how Arabist and partisan the FO became under Labour is illustrated by the statements of Ambassador to Lebanon Francis Guy. It will be recalled that in January 2006, quoting the Sufi Sheikh Ba, Francis Guy declared that bringing Turkey into the European Union is, quote, a way of binding these two great religions together, proving that there's no clash of civilizations. Needless to say, no member of the establishment has asked British and other European Christians whether they want to see their religion bound together with Islam. Again, all being done without the consent of the people who it's affecting. And if you question it and you say, actually, I don't like this, then you're a bigot and you're a racist. I'm going to arrest you for bowing your head slightly and thinking things in the wrong place. On the 5th of July 2010, in a post on the Foreign Office blog, Guy praised Grand Ayatollah Mohammed Hussein Fadlallah, a supporter of Iran with links to Hezbollah terrorists, as a true man of religion, insisting that the world needed more like him. Also note the extraordinary fawning posture assumed by Her Majesty's Ambassador, Guy, in her meeting with Fadlallah. The post was removed a few days later on the orders of the new Conservative Foreign Secretary William Hague, and that was as reported by The Guardian. However, in an illustration of how the British system works, Guy was allowed to keep her job until July 2011, during which time she was free to promote her peculiar vision of the nation's and the Western world's future. And I think we might leave it there for tonight. Yes. It's a good place to stop. But you'll see we just stopped on page 433. That wasn't intentional, so don't read too much into the 33 there, you know, if you are prone to that. You know, there's a 4 in front of it, so that's 433. And the book is going to end on page, is it here? The next one? 58 something. I checked it out before. 489, right? So that means we've got 56 pages to go. That's quite a big. So Friday night's reading is going to be 56 pages. Is going to be a long one on Friday night. So pack a sandwich and a hot drink if you're going to join in for the finale and the conclusion of the book on Friday night. Fantastic. What do you think? ESP says there's an understatement. I'm not sure which statement it was, though, but thanks. A lot of understatements. I think that was an excellent chapter. And as I said, I didn't know there was going to be so much discussion of Charles, Chucky. People in my Telegram chat may recall a while ago that I posted a picture of some artwork. Here it is. Some artwork that I found on the window of a cafe that I like to go to. The cafe is, it's got a really good name. It's called A Front for Something. And that abbreviates to FFS. Which has another meaning as well in kind of internet slang, FFS. And I went there for a bit of a fry-up. It's a nice little greasy spoon cafe, you know, but it's got a lot of character. And they had a bit of a window art, and I took a picture of it, and I'll put it up on the screen now. Can you see that? I hope that's coming through all right. And we walked past there the other day, and it's gone. So I'm really glad I took a picture of it when I did, because I think it's pretty good, and I want to share that with you all. There are some fairly switched on people running this particular cafe, But I don't know why this little guy on the left here with his arm in the air and the crown on, he's still there. But this wonderful portrait of our Islamist monarch is not there anymore. But anyway, we'll get rid of that. So I hope you're all doing well and you all enjoyed that reading. We got Armory 1 over on Rumble says that was a good one. Thank you. You're very welcome. Heidi says, good eye for that Khayyam quote, Nick. Thank you, Bye. Yes, thank you very much, Bye. He's a great person, very knowledgeable, incredibly, like he's one of the people in my chat that's more intelligent and knowledgeable than I am, which is fantastic because I get to learn every day from wonderful people who share their information and their lessons and their learning with me. So that's good. I'm very, very blessed indeed. Over on YouTube, there's been all sorts going on. I'm not going to be able to catch up and read all this, am I? Somebody's called, Trevor McDonald's here. Treason, highest treason, he says. LJ says, I bet he hasn't read the whole Bible. Gwen says, he took lessons in Arabic so he could read the Quran in the original. No way. Is that true? And then Trevor McDonald has a fantastic... let me see if I can read this right first time. Trevor McDonald says, the arch fake wank of Canterbury. Which is a really good phrase. It's good to get a bit sweary every now and again, isn't it? Dars K says, look up a video called Information Archive, the anti-white hatred of George Carlin. Ooh, that sounds like a spicy one. I'm going to forget to do that unless I type it into a browser right now. The anti-white hatred of George Carlin. Let's see if I can find that later and watch that before I go to bed. LJ says, this is why Sadiq Khan keeps getting in as London mayor. He did us a solid, though, when he investigated the anti-abortion fanatics and discovered that they actually weren't being fanatics at all. They were just being calm, sensible, kind, caring, considerate, compassionate people. Dars K says, I'm surprised I was allowed to comment that. So I think that's in reference to Sam Gerrans. So that's another browser window I've got to open and remember to go and hunt down. Who is this character? Sam Gerrans. So much to learn, so little time. Okay, I think I found him. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Always happy to have new avenues for learning and understanding and exploration. Sedes, good night. I think you've already left by now. I didn't catch that earlier, but good night. Hope you have a good night. We have most authentic buildings have ugly plastic windows, says Celine Lyon. And does anybody here remember how the mainstream media mocked and demonized Charles's criticism of the horrific architecture that was being built in the UK from the early 70s onwards? I don't remember that. That's interesting, though, because the architecture is like that's another weapon. You know, it's another weapon that's used, I think, to demoralize and bring people down and make people feel crappy about where they live and the environments that they have to inhabit every day. Just wear you down and erode, and it's like sandpaper on your soul, you know, just gradually scratching away to just bring you down. Shit. All right. I think that's about it. Frank says, great again. Apologies for the late arrival. Better slightly late than never. No problem. And then Frank says, king sausage must fry harder. I don't know how you do it, Frank. Always the best wordplay by far. All right, I think that is it. Let's wrap it up. So, allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews for all my links and everything you need to stay in touch. Shoot me an email, join the mailing list, join the Devised community, and hang out on a call in real time. It's a lot of fun. I'm not a scary person to talk to, I promise. I'm very interested in meeting people, building relationships, getting to know you, and hearing, you know, how's life, what's going on. Have you got any concerns, any recommendations, any things you want to get off your chest? Let's build a community where people can find that much needed connection in a time where people are being driven apart and divided and conquered in so many different ways, right? So we're going to be back Friday night. We're going to finish the book. We've got 50 pages to do, which is a big ask for one stream. So I might skip the preamble ramble on Friday and we'll just get straight into the book and make sure we get it polished off. And then we'll be choosing the next one. So that is exciting indeed. Thank you so much for joining the replay, joining the live performance and the replay. If you just got to the end of the replay at some point in the future, that's cool. And this is amazing that we have this technology and we can communicate to each other in this way, go on this learning journey together and uplift ourselves out of ignorance, out of apathy, say goodbye to analysis paralysis, understand what is going on, be able to explain it to our neighbors and our friends and our loved ones, and we'll have a much better chance of moving forward into the future with some sort of prosperity or success or well-being intact, hopefully. If we are lucky, with a little bit of luck, God willing, we can do that. So I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. For those of you in the device community, we'll have sessions tomorrow night, 6 till 9 p.m. UK time, the book club and the Screenaholics meeting. And if you're not in device community yet, then sign up. It's free for now. And as I said, it would be lovely to see you on a call and get to know you a bit better. Take care of yourselves and each other. And I hope that you have a good week, staying warm, being productive, spending time doing things you love with the people you love and who love you. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? So take care of yourselves and God bless.